Recording in progress.
Hey, good evening. This is a work session of the Greenbelt City Council. My name is Emmett Jordan. I serve as mayor, and I'm joined by my colleagues at the table, council members.
Kristen Weaver, Mayor Pro Tem.
Jenny Pompey, council member.
Danielle McKinney, council member.
Amy Niesel, council member.
Dr. Pope, council member.
Okay. Hey, anybody got information items for the end of the meeting?
I have one, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
I have a few, I think three, but fairly short ones.
I've got one. Short.
Got one?
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, we hold these council work sessions on Mondays and Wednesdays several times a month to exchange information with community stakeholder groups or to get information from staff, from advisory boards or residents. No votes or formal actions are taken at work sessions. Our work sessions and meetings are open to the public except for executive sessions as authorized by state law so that residents and others can observe council's deliberations. We do strive to provide reasonable opportunities for the public to voice opinions on matters being considered, and we'll pause periodically for public comment. During these times, if you wish to address council or if you wish to make a comment, if you're here in the room, once you're recognized, you can go to the podium. We need you to state your name and where you live in Greenbelt, more or less. If you're on Zoom, you can use the Q&A tab to submit a question in writing, or if you raise your virtual hand, we'll be able to promote you so that you can speak. If you are watching on Facebook or YouTube or on our cable TV station, you can send a question to us at questions@greenbeltmd.gov. That would be the email address. So we'll do our best to acknowledge and to pick up on all of those different comments coming in. It gets a little hairy sometimes. There's a lot going on. So I just want to urge you, if you while you're making a statement, please try and limit your remarks to 3 minutes. 3 to 5 minutes, 3 minutes more or less. Speak on one topic, please, related to the question under consideration so that others can speak. And as always, we ask you to avoid questioning the motives of others and just in general, be civil in your remarks. We're all neighbors. We're all Greenbelters. So that's how it is right now. And tonight, the work session topic, we're talking about American Rescue Plan funding. So the American Rescue Plan Act came into existence, it's been just about 2 years since it was first established by the federal government to help. And the thing that was unique about it, it was federal money that actually came to local jurisdictions, directly to municipalities. So that's a rare thing. And it was to really help local communities like Greenbelt recover from the short and longer term impacts of COVID-19, which just is transformational in the way that it affected the way that we interacted as individuals. And just it's hard to really think back to everything that happened during those COVID years. And of course, we're still not really through it completely. There are long-term impacts both to our health as well as our economy and just the city people in general, mental health. So Greenbelt, we received about almost $23 million in ARPA funding. We did extensive public participation to try and solicit suggestions and thoughts from the public as council's will, that we have a very open process, just in terms of responding to the needs of our residents and making sure that everyone's voices were heard. So at that time, Tim, you were serving as the acting city manager, and I'll say it again, it's just a really difficult time, 2021, 2022. So as we get started, City Manager Samarone, welcome. It's nice to see you.
Good to see you all again today.
Okay. So, Tim, are you going to kind of walk us through? You've done so much work on this project, just making sure that we got to the point where we are today, because we're just about halfway through with the spending and with the timeline.
Correct. And really, this even started before I joined the city because, we
It came out in March of 21, and the staff then began with an ARPA spending plan and recommendations, and then I came on in June and have been working on it ever since. So it's been a long effort with the full team. So what I've done tonight is I took, chat with Josue, I took the memo that I provided you all in the packet and went and turned it into a PowerPoint just so we could flow through the slides a little bit better. Pulled out a few points on each slide. I also have a summary slide in the beginning. Probably 15 slides, hopefully get through relatively quickly since you all have seen the material. And a lot of this will be repetitive, only because I've been giving you kind of bi-weekly ARPA updates for the last 2 or 3 months. So this is just really a summary, as the cover slide says. It's really a 2021 to 2023 summary of where we've been, what we've accomplished to date, and where we're going. And really, this team has been tremendous. The amount of work we've put in, I think initially there were 58 projects that council approved through the 2 or 3 work sessions that we had. Those projects have turned into almost 65 to 70 because we've added some projects through reallocation. We've added some projects only because we split them in half. So like the 2.3 million that was assigned for fields became 3 projects because we have the soccer field, the baseball fields, and the equipment. So the original 58 really, and I haven't added them all up, but it's probably around 70 now. So,
Hey, Tim, before you get too far, I really want to compliment you on this memo and the summary that you've put together. The packet is very comprehensive. There's a lot of good information. It just really describes the whole process. So, and of course, the packet is available. If you go to the city website and go to this works session, you can actually download the materials. So the PowerPoint is very, very helpful. But the information that you compiled is really
and
very good.
Thank you. And all the fresh data will be uploaded to the Engage Greenbelt website this week. James and I are going to meet on that and talk about it tomorrow. They were doing a lot of work this week getting ready for the business conference. But we try to keep that Engage Greenbelt site as fresh with data as we can. So as we have spending changes or we do additional allocations, or we add that to the website. So that is a great resource, is to go to engagegreenbelt.org. So we want to start the presentation. Kind of hit on the agenda. We're really just going to do a quick overview. So how do I see what you're seeing?
Hey, Mayor, if you're wondering, the 2 individuals that are also at the table, we've got the citizens group that will be have a presentation they'll be conducting after Tim's presentation. So
I knew
Bob
that.
Brad and Nirvana. Just up for the benefit of the public who are also seeing.
So just a quick overview of our approach, which is a new slide, something that was not really in the memo, but something we've talked a lot about. And then I'll just kind of go quickly through what we've done today, where we are, what's left to do, and then some brief recommendations that the city manager and I and staff have kind of looked at in terms of spending some of the uncommitted funds, as we're calling it. So if you want to
Okay.
slide. Sharing. So as she's pulling it up, as you all remember from the very beginning, one of the most important things that council decided initially was we want to support our residents. We got $22.88 million, and then by being 22.889 because we got an extra allocation. But one of the most important things we were going to do was to support the residents first, and also support our businesses, because that was the most important thing. How were we as a city and as a staff and a council going to help our residents, our businesses come out of this pandemic as best we could? So clearly, as you all remember, one of the very first things we did, even before we started our ARPA meetings, is we allocated $1.6 million. We gave an initial allocation of $500,000 for rental assistance, $500,000 for business assistance. We put money in for nonprofits, for food pantries, and just immediately got money out on the street. And that was even before we started the process, because we didn't want our residents to have to wait. So that was very important. And as you'll see in these tables, I think in total we've given almost $2.9 million away to our residents through rental assistance. That's been very important. continuing the recovery of our residents, providing additional fund support. Liz and her team have been extremely instrumental in that, and as has Kevin, with workforce developments. We've done a lot of with job training. We've had job fairs at Beltway Plaza. A lot of that is funded or kind of co-funded through ARPA, but really with the desire of helping our residents get through COVID to the other side as painlessly as possible, knowing that this has been kind of a once in a lifetime for us event so far, hopefully, in total. Yep. Dealing with food insecurity has been been very important. That's why I had almost $300,000 to food banks in the area. While we continue to do the Thursday food, once a month on Thursday food drive, that's not actually ARPA funded, but that just goes to show what this city does and how we care about our residents. At the same time, we want to support our business growth and our business recovery. In that initial funding, we call it BRF 2 because actually in the CARES funding that came before, there was a first round of support through the CARES Act. So the Business Infrastructure Recovery Fund version 2 was what we did in the emergency. And again, that was another $500,000. Of that, we spent $400 initially, with $100,000 was going to be used for workforce development. And then we've continued to develop programs for resiliency and support of our businesses. Kevin Simpson and his team have done a really good job of continuing that business support, as evidenced by this morning. That fantastic seminar session we had, almost 140 people came, 140 businesses, state. I mean, it was a fantastic event. So all of those things, there's more to come from Kevin. We have another 2 resiliency program, another marketing thing that will also be coming out that's going to be unveiled soon. And then the third thing that we talked to council about was trying to replace that lost revenue. When we hit COVID, our tax dollars dropped a little bit. We stopped spending on a lot of capital projects, a lot of the infrastructure, a lot of the vehicle projects we stopped. And that needs to continue. We have to have police cars that are operable and vehicles for our public works equipment. That's all very important to have. By allocating ARPA funds to the 23 and the 24 budget, we took the burden off of the revenue stream itself, which really took the burden off of the taxpayers. So we didn't have to fund a lot of the projects we did in 23 and 24 with our revenue stream. We funded it through the ARPA stream.
Yeah, that's a really important point about the lost revenue and the way that the federal government allocated the money to us. And of that nearly $23 million, you did, and staff did a lot of work on a calculation to find out, to just take a look at how much income we did lose with the programs and the recreation department that we ordinarily would have, and more substantially just investments, deferred spending. We really locked down our budget for a couple of years there and did not make some significant expenditures. So that the amount for lost revenue was about $10 million.
10 million was our allocation. And that's a very good point, Mayor, that during COVID, the pool basically shut down for a number of months. And that's a huge, the revenue stream there was cut by almost a third because all of those revenues stopped, which obviously they would when the pools closed and the recreation facilities were closed. Greg and his team did a fantastic job of taking a lot of their things online. They had virtual camps and virtual seminars and things, but again, those aren't fee-based. Those were for free, and we're happy to do that. But that did have a significant impact on our revenue stream.
Yeah, and more importantly, council made the decision. We deferred. We did not purchase vehicles for.
Correct.
And so, I mean, there are things things break and things get old, and we have a replacement schedule. And the amount of time that we keep vehicles and equipment in service seems to get longer and longer. That's partially because our employees are very good at maintaining things. We actually stopped spending on some things. That's deferred expenditures.
Absolutely.
So I think we stopped on a lot of different levels with our infrastructure needs, our vehicles, public safety, public works. So I think a lot of things came to a standstill. But I think that now, I think we're going into the budget season. We're going to have to take a real close look because I think a lot of things are popping up infrastructure-wise. I think that may need attention.
Yeah, and as you all know, and as the residents know, while all those things were stopping and we weren't purchasing things and we're delaying certain projects, the services delivered to the residents never changed. We still provide a very high level of service, pushing snow, picking up trash, doing everything we always do. But sometimes with vehicles and fleet that were really kind of getting old. Harris and the group, the mechanics over at DPW are fantastic. They did a great job of keeping our fleet running. But in 23 and 24, we really need to change that. And you'll see in these tables, we purchased police cars, pickup trucks, some equipment, aerators, and other things that we really needed, but we had to defer. Because we didn't know how long COVID was going to last. We didn't know how much of an impact it would have on our revenue stream. Whether it was whether income tax or real estate tax. So we really had to pay attention to and be very, very cautious over that 2 to 3 year period.
Right. And then just finally, the other thing was people, our employees. There was just so much uncertainty. We really didn't know what the risk some of our employees that still had to be on the job during COVID. They were really dealing with serious, difficult situations because they were interacting with the public and then going home, not being able to, having to, isolate themselves from their families. So we ended up, trying to make them whole by, providing paying people appropriately, and just no one really knew what was going to happen next. So, and public works and the police department, social services go on regardless of the conditions. So.
So this is just a very brief review. When I talked to Osway and threw that to the mayor about kind of what we wanted to show in this memo, in this presentation, really it's just to kind of tell the story of where we came from, how we got here. We have new council members that are certainly aware of it, but just want to make sure everyone kind of understands the storyline. And we had, in total, we had 29 different public meetings where resident input was available. Those included the 3 public open meetings. We had one in each of the areas of the city, as well as focus groups, 9 council work sessions dedicated to ARPA, plus Benita and Shania did a great job of digging into the agenda for me and found out that there were at least 13 other regular meetings where ARPA issues came up on the agenda. And of course, the residents are welcome to speak at all of our public meetings and open meetings. So that really kind of gives you 29 different times where we had this up in a public forum for people to listen and give their input. We opened up an Engage Greenbelt.org website, which was a brand new site, mainly because this platform allowed us to be a lot more creative with the way we present data than our current site. And we'll worry about the website in the next budget. But in total, just in the first couple of months that website was open, we had over 2,100 visits to the site. We set up a posted note comment section so residents could go on the site and just add any comment they wanted in terms of what they wanted to do with ARPA and their thoughts. We got 110 of those. We had 300 responses to our survey. All of that information was aggregated by staff into that long list that we then presented to council that we went through. So a lot of the ideas, and I think residents should know that a lot of the projects that were funded by council were originally, those ideas came from the residents from the very beginning. So their resident ideas have been incorporated. A lot of the resident ideas mirrored what council had come up with, what staff had come up with. So a lot of them were already on the list, but we did add a number from the residents specifically. So I just want to point out that point of how much engagement we really had, and it was a lot. And it's important because Greenbelt, we are all about engagement. And hearing from our residents is very important to staff. It's very important to council to make sure everyone's voices are heard, especially our taxpaying residents. Another issue I want to point out is, so direct benefit allocations is something I'm calling, which is really all of the grant programs that we set up that council approved that provide direct benefit to our residents and our businesses. So these are not roof projects or vehicles or anything like that. These are grant programs, whether it's rental assist, HOA assistance, food and security assistance, our grant programs to businesses. So all that, I just want to draw that out and let you know, show the 33% of our total funding has gone to direct benefit programs. I also consider kind of parks and recreation related, and that's not rec like Greg got to spend all this money. It's any program that you all approve that is kind of parks and recreation related is another 16%, and that's the Buddy Attic Inclusive Playground. It's the bike ped work that Terry's working on. So that's another 16. So when you add all that together, it's nearly 15%, nearly 50% of the funding that council allocated has gone directly to the benefit of residents. Now, I would kind of argue that all the projects we do are resident-based because putting a new roof on the police station allows our police force to have a quality facility that then allows them to protect and serve. So, but these are kind of direct benefit programs, and that's almost 50%, 49.2 according to my table. Next. Project status, again, this is something that you've seen in all of your biweekly memos from me. I just want to give you an update because one of the things we've talked about, and I think I talked to these gentlemen about as well, is that ARPA is very fluid right now. Even though we're within a year of the end, projects are still kind of flowing in and out of, once they're complete, they're complete. But projects that are under development are going into the committed stage, ongoing are going. So as we get to a point where council has approved it, it goes from under development to committed. So these numbers change. They don't change dramatically, but some projects are coming in below budget, which is great. So that money kind of goes back into the unfunded column. Some are coming in over budget, and we're just kind of compensating that with other projects, which is why we're not going to be able to give you a $28.889 million number every single week because we really are allowing for money to flow back and forth a little bit. With the thought in mind, as I've told you and Josue as well, that on December 31st, we will have zero money left. We will spend it all. But right now, we need to be a little bit flexible because we don't want to commit 100%, have a critical infrastructure project or a social project go over budget, and then deny someone additional funding or deny a project. That's why we're being a little bit flexible now. As we get closer to June and July, then we'll be much tighter in terms of really nailing down how we close out the last 6 months.
I was just going to ask, can we scroll the screen up just a little bit so we can see the table there at the bottom?
I don't, yeah, not without doing, not having full screen.
Smaller and roll it up.
I think not if you have it on full screen.
Okay. Oh, there you go.
We don't want to turn off the closed captioner.
Right. Of course not. Okay. Very good.
So again, these numbers are not too different from what you saw 2 weeks ago, but each week we are adding different, moving things around and completing more projects. If you want to go to the next slide, we can talk about. So in total, we've completed 23 of the programs and projects that council approved and directed staff to work on. Those are listed in the table on that. This table is also in the memo, which may be a little bit easier to read. It's a little bigger font, as well as on the website. So in that, 23 projects, roughly 10 million has been, I think you're one slide too. Can you go back one slide? Perfect, thank you. So we're roughly about 46% has already been completely allocated and done, which is good. We really feel like we're on track. We're on pace to finish on time. We're not worried at this point that we're going to run out of time. Public Works, Brian Kim and his crew have done a fantastic job of managing a lot of the infrastructure projects. Of the projects we've completed, 6 fall under the ARPA category, 17 under the lost revenue. Premium pay is both because some of the premium pay for first responders and public works workers did fall under the premium pay. ARPA, the other premium pay that council allocated for staff falls under lost revenue. So that's why it's a split. And again, this was really designed to help take the pressure off of the 23 and the 24 capital budgets. So next.
Our residents are thankful.
This just looks at the current ongoing open projects, really kind of slicing the data in two different ways. From a subject category, the grant and funding programs that we have open are almost $2 million still, 1.75. Project programs, those are more capital purchases of vehicles and other capital projects is $4.5 million. And then kind of what I'm thinking, kind of calling quality of life, bike, ped, recreation related is 2.5 million. Slicing it the other way, I just want to show you what it breaks down in terms of ARPA qualified or lost revenue qualified.
Hey, so on that last slide, what do the asterisks mean?
Slide has
It's like they're ongoing programs. I'm not sure. So what do the asterisks mean?
slide.
It's on the grant program somewhere. It's not on the one we've looked at yet.
Oh, that's coming up next.
That's
Okay.
coming up next.
Oh, I'm just ahead. Oh man.
All right, so we can move on to the next.
This one has the asterisks, because I had a question about the asterisks too.
So the asterisks, those are programs that are still open and still active, and for the let's see, I think that's.
There was something in the memo that I think referenced it, that I think I determined might have been what that was referring to. Was it the ones that there are several grant programs where the funds have been awarded, but staff is awaiting reimbursement requests or other documentation to process the payments?
You want to sit over here with me?
I
No,
had the
that-
same question and then tried to read until I could figure out what the asterisks were.
Yeah, that's correct. So specifically, so if you look at the two business, the building capital infrastructure grant and business improvement, those funds have been committed at the level that's in the table. But in each of those, for each of those grants, there's 2 or 3 grantees that Kevin and his team are still working through final details on delivering the grant. In some cases, they needed to fill out a form. One case, I think they were in arrears with the city. So if all those grants are fully completed, then we'll be at those numbers. So that's where that comes from. With Luminous, they're in the process of working through. I have an asterisk there because part of that grant is they're going to do 3 mobile clinics for us, and so far they've only done 2. So we will have another one coming in the spring for another mobile clinic. So that's what the asterisk means, is that those are grants where we've made initial awards, but we haven't paid out the money yet because we're still waiting on some information. Again, this just kind of slices the data a different way, just to show you for the programs that are open, the grant summary, what we've done in businesses and what we've done in resident support. And move on to the next one. The next slide kind of gets to what I know you all want to talk about, and certainly what Bob and Nirvan want to talk about, which is kind of the remaining funding in a lot of these grant programs and where our current grant programs are. CCI and Luminous were saying kind of are fully funded because they're already active working on those programs. But that just is a summary of what you all allocated, what has been spent, and then what's left. And then, of course, there was a reallocation on October 9 where we pulled some money back, not from programs that were actively being used, but for programs where we didn't feel like that money was going to be spent by the end of the year, and we wanted to reallocate it. So if you look at education scholarships, we still have 110,000 left in that pool, which really comes down. That's 11 more students if it was a full year, but since we're in a half year period, that'd be 22 more students that could get a grant. And I think we gave 29 grants in the first round. So staff feels pretty good that these numbers are solid. They're in the back in the At the end of our presentation, we have made some recommendations to refund some of these programs, and that's kind of on our last slide. One of the issues that has been a hindrance for a lot of residents is the SAM.gov requirement. You have to have a SAM.gov registration and number in order to get federal funds. That is not a City of Greenbelt requirement. That is a federal requirement. Any federal grant at any level from any federal department, you have to have SAM.gov. We've had some groups step up, especially Susan Walker with the CDC has been extremely helpful in stepping up to be the fiscal sponsor for a tree canopy for residents, and that's been wonderful. So we will continue to look for fiscal sponsors to help with that, but we do recognize that that's been a big problem, and unfortunately, it's just simply not something that the city has any control over. And like I said, select funding is being warranted and is recommended, and we'll get to that on the last slide. Next. Just got one more. So this is when we did the October 9 reallocation, there were a number of projects that you all approved. I just want to let you know that staff is working very hard on getting all those done, as we are on the other projects. I actually changed it from the memo. The variable message boards are in. When I wrote the memo, they were not in. But Brian Kim sent me a picture of 2 VMBs on the back of a tractor trailer, which was really cool. So we have them. So it's very helpful to have those. Every time we want to use one for Labor Day or any other event or the 4th of July, we have to borrow from our peers, and it's getting really, especially on 4th of July, big events like that, it's hard to find them because other people use them. So having 2 VMBs will be helpful. The police will be able to put them in place when they need them, as well as recreation.
They should be very helpful. Not all too often when there's an accident, say on Kenilworth Avenue or in the Parkway, our police officers are out there directing traffic, and they still would need to be out there. But if there's a detour or something, having those mobile signs can be really, really helpful. Above and beyond the festivals. There's solar too.
Solar,
Excellent.
Yep. So we got solar ARPA ones, so they're not fuel generated. So as you can see, we're kind of working towards completion on all these. The dog water station is one we're still working on, working with WSSC and the contractor to finalize those prices. Otherwise, all the other projects are on the move. The final slide. I think final slide. I can see how quickly I can get through this. So we looked at the at the end of the day, what we're calling kind of uncommitted funds, which is about 1.025, just over $1 million in funding that we've either brought back from existing programs. Programs have come in under budget, or there's some other funding things we decided not to follow up on, just because they're not practical in the time that we had. That left us about 1.11 million in funding availability. Working with Josue and the senior team, we've made some preliminary recommendations. You will notice that our recommendations do not cover the full amount that's available. That's very purposeful on my part and Josue's part. We want to be conservative. We want to make sure that we have money left over the next 4 to 5 months. So as I mentioned earlier, if a project goes over budget, we need more money for something, we have it. We're not going to be fully committed. And once we get kind of into the June timeframe, we'll be much more detailed and focused on locking down everything. But we still feel like we have time for a little wiggle room. For lost revenue, and you'll be hearing about this with the EV plan that's well on its way. The team's been working hard on that. We're recommending $200,000 go to EVSE equipment at PD and DPW. That would be city-facing, not public-facing. As we want to move our fleet into EV, we need to have that infrastructure in place before we buy the vehicles, so they have somewhere to charge. Public Works already has a number of level 2 stations in place. We want to add additional level 2 to Public Works and a few level 3s. For the police department, we're going to want to add more level 3s and level 2s, because the officers, when we go to an electrified patrol fleet, they're going to need 30-minute charging, and that's going to require 480 power, which Currently, the police department does not have 480 power, so we're gonna have to draw that from the line. And that's where the expense really comes from, is running the electricity from the pole to the building and then to the pad site.
We'll have to keep a close eye on that. There should be some more state money available for some of the infrastructure that we need, that should be coming online, and really it should have been online already. But
Oh, it is, and Kerry's doing a great job of tracking down, and you'll see it when you see the EV plan. There's a whole list of grants that we've been tracking and following and submitting on for EV infrastructure. So that's one of the things that Josue certainly directed us to do, and we've really focused on where can we get external funding. So we're not going to count on the city's budget to cover all of our EV infrastructure. There's a lot of money, federal, state, and otherwise, but we're going to need to kind of jumpstart it ourselves. If we want to buy EV electric vehicles, we're going to have the infrastructure in place in order to do that. So that's kind of a first step. The indoor pool deck.
Tim, if I may add to the solar, we have grant funding for EV charging infrastructure. The current funding that we have does not cover all the expense that we have. So a good example, we looked at doing the 8 stations at the library, and the proposals that we receive far exceed the money that we have to do public works and the library. So we're gonna have to select one project, but that's all that we do. So we're likely going to do the library, and that's why the PD and the DPW sites are also listed. The other grant funding opportunities that are coming online does not cover the full cost of EV infrastructure. So we're looking at the PEPCO. There's a cap on how much those projects reimburse. So for example, the Make Ready Fleet program through PEPCO, there's a $15,000 cap per charging station. So those currently then in the bidding that we're getting, the full cost of those projects will not be covered through grant funding. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, please. Oh, Mr. Roberts, please.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I was wondering why do the police cars need 30-minute charging, or for any other, or for that fact, why would any of our cars need to?
Well, that's for
Charge for 30
that's for
minutes.
patrol. So we would recommend for command staff, detectives, animal control, and park enforcement. Those could just be regular EVs with level 2 stations. The problem is it takes 4 to 5 hours to charge a car. So if an officer comes in from home with his vehicle and he needs to get a full charge, they would basically be stuck in the station for 3 to 4 hours while their car charges. Level 3 would charge that car in 30 minutes.
So yeah, that was going to be my next question. Did the driving, having the take-home car have something to do with that? So, and obviously it does. So they're not going to have any charger at home or anything. And,
Well,
and what's the distance they're traveling now though?
We
What's
We
the
would like,
maximum they're going?
for the first question, we would like to be able to allow our officers to have charging at home. That depends on the kind of home they have. If they have a single-family home or a town home where they have dedicated parking and dedicated electric where they can put in a charging station, we would pay for that. We would use grants. That's not terribly expensive. Less than $1,000 for a charging station. The issue comes in with our officers that are in apartment buildings where charging stations are not available. We would hope that a lot of apartment buildings would start to have charging stations available to their tenants. That is coming online, but that's not there now. So if we had a take-home vehicle with an officer that did not have the ability to charge at home, they would come in. I actually talked with Lieutenant Apgar about this yesterday. They would come in, plug their vehicle in right before roll call. Roll call usually lasts about 30 minutes. They could have, do whatever paperwork they needed, jump in a fully charged car, and then be good for the whole day.
I think there's a problem with that because when you do that continuously, you degrade the battery quickly because you can't shove that much juice into any battery that quickly.
That's
a
absolutely
problem
right.
with that.
That's correct.
So
So
that it's the battery life. So
you're right. No,
and-
100%. Which
but
is
I, I don't agree that they need to come in and be out of there in 30 minutes. I think that they can have some other, like I see, a lot of the cars are parked down here for hours, at night or overnight. So they can be charged, regular, like a regular charger.
Well, I mean, that's
But
certainly
I don't
something
think we
we'll
should.
look
I
into.
don't think we should be making a huge expenditure for a couple or a few people to have take home cars. I think we need to find some other way of solving that problem rather than trying to charge everything in 30 minutes, because you're having this huge outlay to get the power in, and then you're degrading it unnecessarily. And
Well, it's not,
we're
and,
not going to get
yeah.
the life out of the battery in
It's
the
not,
car.
yeah, it's
that
just,
we
it's
need.
not just for take-home vehicles, it's for really anyone, even a public works vehicle. If we have an electric vehicle and the battery gets low and they need to use that in service, they're gonna wanna charge it right away.
But those cars are going hundreds of miles now, and we're only riding around town, so they're not doing 200 miles in a day. They're not. They're doing, 20 miles in a day on a car that will do 2 or 3, or some of them are 400 or 500 miles a day that they can do.
What I'd like
So
to do,
I think you're getting carried
if you
away
don't
with the
mind.
charging stuff.
I'd like to, once Mr. George finishes, I'd like to just have a few quick questions on the update part from council, from the public. Then we'll pivot and, for the people's first presentation. Then when we finish that, then we can actually talk about reallocations. But I know there's a couple of questions just about where we are. So, Mr. George,
I want to hit all these in detail. Like, indoor pool deck engineering analysis, we know that there's some structural issues with that tech, so we need to do some analysis to make sure we know what it is. And then dropping down to the ARPA recommendations, and I'm happy to circle back to any of these you like to talk about. CCI has done a fantastic job. They actually went through all 400. I chatted with Jessica about this yesterday. We'd like to recommend that we allocate another 200,000 to them so they can continue that good work. The mortgage down payment assistance program with GHI has been very successful. Again, I've spoken with all the folks and Preferred Title feels like they could, if they had another six or seven grant opportunities, they would be able to put another 5 or 6 or 7 people into GHI housing. So that's that recommendation. And then the last one, Buddy Attic Park Lake improvements. That when that master plan comes out, there's going to be a lot of recreational and other amenities that the plan will recommend. And though because they're outdoor and they're park related, those are ARPA related projects. So we would set aside $100,000 for the implementation of those initiatives. So that's really all I've got. I'm very happy to answer any questions that you all have along the way.
very good. In going through this information and thinking back how we got to this point, it's you can't really have this conversation without thinking a little bit about Debbie Sandlin and all the work that she did as a contractor for the city to kind of position us for this
I'm glad you
ARPA
mentioned.
money.
I'm glad you mentioned that. That is so true. Yes, yes, she did really a wonderful job. Yes.
So I have just a couple of just general on the update part, a couple of questions or comments, because it looks like we truly are just about halfway with the timeline and both with our expenditures. And so one question that's come up before with the lost revenue funding, that is, I understand that we are at the cap pretty much for what we can use under the category of lost revenue. Is that correct?
We took the federal government would allow a max allocation of 10 million, which is what the city opted to do. So as you'll see from here, we've basically, what I'm saying, kind of committed all but 496,000 of that lost revenue. So we have another basically $500,000 left to allocate.
And that would be just cost overruns or just anticipating what might happen. So just in my review, just kind of taking a look at where we spent the money, the biggest chunk did in fact that $10 million in lost revenue, the rental assistance $2.8 million, the premium pay for our employees $1.2 million, road resurfacing, business grants when you combine them was $1.1 million, and deferred spending on vehicles and whatnot was about $1 million. But I have sort of a difficult, question, just looking as we're moving forward, the capital projects that are coming up, I'm just wondering how you're feeling about where we are. Particularly, we had set aside $1 million for a ball field for working on Brayton Field and Strom Hills soccer field improvements, field maintenance. And I'm just wondering, so with a year to go, realistically, and also, with the youth center upgrades and the community center updates, how is that going to impact programming? And are we realistically going to be able to do these upgrades on the fields without really just closing down the fields for like a year?
We will have to close the fields down for a period of time. Greg has had very good conversations with Greenbelt Baseball and the other users of the baseball fields, and they're prepared for the shutdown. In fact, they wrote, as you all probably saw, almost a year ago, they wrote a pretty comprehensive list of requests of things that they would like improvements done to the field, both safety, some are aesthetics. So they're very excited about this. They understand that there will probably be a season where they have to find somewhere else to play, but they're okay with that because they know that when they come back to Braden Field on McDonald Field, they know that they're going to have really kind of world-class facilities. We've already engaged. Greg has been working hard, talking to CBJ and some other project managers that could help us manage these projects. In fact, Josue and I are going to meet with Greg on Friday to go through all of those proposals and see where we are. We feel very confident that we can have those contracts signed and committed by the end of the year, and then we have 2 years from that point on, to phase the development of those projects.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and that's why I'm asking, because I know how important the condition of Braden, the outfields in Braden Field and over at Strom Hills, the soccer fields and the baseball fields over there as well. They really do. They need some attention and they need some love.
It's a real safety issue. When we walked the Strom Hills field, it's bad. I mean, there are all sorts of holes and pits, and the slope is bad, and I mean, they really don't play on it. In fact, that field is simply not usable for sports at this point. You can do a little pick. Also, Strom Hills, where we want to put the soccer field. The outfield in Braden is in really bad shape, but the Strom Hills field is so bad at this point that you simply can't program it for soccer because children would really hurt themselves. So there's a lot of safety issues related, but also just a value issue. If we can have a high quality, world-class soccer facility, it would be great. And Greg has done a really good job working with the contractors. We're working kind of in conjunction with Prince George's with the MNC PBC Park and Planning. They've got a couple of guys on their staff that are experts in field redoing fields, and we've walked the property with them and got a lot of ideas from them on vendors and how best to make those fields safe and playable for our youth.
Right. So just kind of drilling down once again. So the thinking is 2025, the summer of 2025. One or both of these fields are not going to be available.
Correct. Yeah. And Greg will do a good job of phasing that with the leagues. I think the preference would be for Braden Field would be to wait until the spring baseball season is over, so they can have one final season on it, and then once the season's over, then basically take it offline and work that field all the way through the fall. And then the following spring, they might be able to play on it. So it may be that we really only take away fall baseball. But they're able to play their spring season. So we're going to phase it in such a way that we minimize how long the field has to come offline. But clearly, both fields will have to come offline because you can't play while you're doing the upkeep.
And just real quick, the same thing with the youth center, the HVAC and the ductwork. That's going to require that the youth center be closed for a couple of months or for a month.
No, I would think a week, if that. In fact, depending on the time of year and the climate. You might not have to close it at all.
Same thing with the chillers and the
same thing with the chillers. So the chillers will be replaced once we go into heating season. so you won't even know that they're being replaced. So we'll wait until we get to the end of the chill season, and then we normally switch between chiller and boiler because of the way the system works. As soon as the chillers come offline, then you can just replace them, and you'll never notice that it was gone. But most of these things we will do as good a job as we can to phase them on the shoulder season, so that if the building had to be shut down, it would be only for a couple of days. But at this point, we're not anticipating that they'll be closed down at all.
Okay, Ms. Pope and then Mayor Pro Tem. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, so this is the projects that we were doing. There's some work planned for Spring Hill Lake Rec Center that's not on this list because that's funded separately from ARPA. Is that correct?
So-
Yeah, okay. So just because I think, if you look at this list, but those projects are already in progress from other sorts of monies. So the couple of specific questions that I had, we have the Armory feasibility study on this. Hopefully we will get the Armory in time to be able to do that. But I guess one thought I had, because that's that's $150,000. That's a pretty significant amount of money. And I actually don't remember how much the municipal building feasibility study cost and what that would be. But I guess I'm just thinking, was it how?
70 for the.
Okay, yeah. But I guess what I'm wondering is something to think about with that is that space something for a wider feasibility study, including some of the things that were brought up at our work session on Monday, even thinking about, because if we do a feasibility study for the Armory, that implies looking at what could fit well there, including things like we've talked about the fire department and other things. Then could we maybe also include as part of that at least some preliminary information about the previous site, and even possibly something in a little bit more detail about the proposal about the municipal building at the Roosevelt Center versus here. So just a thought to throw out there, that if that $50,000 was enough to maybe get to make it a little bit broader than just the Armory, it would not be.
It would not be. And in fact, the 150,000 for doing a full-blown feasibility study of doing some concepts for different uses of the Armory building, 150,000 is not enough.
Okay.
So speaking with Tim, we're looking at getting a comprehensive feasibility study will cost us closer to 250,000. Now, what you're talking about in terms of the different assets and looking at how they fit into our overall vision, that's doing visioning for the city. And that's a different approach than the feasibility study for a particular property, which is something that I think as a result of the last work session that council is interested in looking at what is the big picture for the city.
I guess it seems helpful to me. It would be, we had, I feel like it was a bit of a contrast in the meeting on Monday. We have very specific possibilities of like how much it would cost to rebuild this building. And we have this idea for the building at Roosevelt Center, but not really a good sense of, is that going to be at the same level of cost? Is that being on a slope going to cause more challenges? But okay, this is, if it's not going to be enough money for that, then that
right, and
that is what it is.
We are looking at opportunities where should our bond bill request get approved at the state legislature, that one of the requests is to pay for the Armory feasibility study. So
that could free up some of this money.
So it
for
could free up
things.
all of this additional the 150,000, or we could add this 150 to it to have a more comprehensive
Yeah, that makes sense.
assessment.
Let's put a pin in that idea.
Yeah.
Something,
Yes.
something to put
Yeah.
on the list of possibilities.
The-
Ms.
I-
Pope,
well,
go ahead,
I had one
please.
more sort of specific one, because we have the stormwater study that's on this list as well, and I feel like we haven't heard as many updates about that, so not necessarily asking for that now, but it would be, that's, I think, the Commission of Stormwater Drainage Study, the one that's there. Just, I would love to hear some more, not now, but at some point, some more updates about how that's going. And then my last general thought was, and I think the answer is probably no, but have we done an analysis of the distribution of funding spent in different parts of the city? I think for the building projects, that's relatively easy to do. It would be great if we could also do that looking at the people who've applied for the homeowner rental assistance, homeowners assistance, and actually taking those addresses and mapping them. And actually really take a look at how did we distribute this funding throughout the city, and was that done equitably?
We have talked about that internally, and we're going to work on mapping that data. Planning and community development are going to map that data
Great.
for us. So we're aggregating all the tabulated
Right.
information as we need.
That would
to
be really, I
today.
think that analysis would be really, really helpful.
I agree. We'd be able to see with the food distribution and the rental assistance exactly how that broke down.
I
Ms.
think
Pope?
even we had that on the rental assistance. We didn't get the addresses, but we got the, percentage of, I think I have that document somewhere. It was definitely for the rental assistance where it was broken down in section throughout the city. Now, not exact addresses, of course, because it's,
Yeah, we don't need
private
that.
information, we don't need that, but I did have that. Now, I didn't have for the food distribution. I never seen that, but
Distribution's
that's
gonna be more
harder to-
challenge, yes.
and that's more of a challenge because I know for a while we had it in my school at Spring Hill Lake Elementary School for many years, and then we had it at the, and now we have it down here in the Roosevelt Center. So
Part of it is that the process have changed. We now have card registration. So from that point, we're tracking that information. Previously, we wouldn't. It would have just been open pickup.
so maybe now it's trackable because there is possibly an address
There's a
or something where you can see registration,
right.
and you can see where. And the other question, well, now that we're food distribution, I'm wondering if we are going to bring it back to Franklin Park at some point.
We are doing.
Because we
food
did it at Greenwich House as well. Remember?
Spring Hill Lake Rec Center as well.
Yeah, but not as frequent, I think, because we didn't.
It's the same.
The
we do
same
it-
day, both, but it's what is it, the third Thursday of the month or second?
Then is
Center
it
and
because
It's this
before,
week, or-
before I
right?
was always
Smart.
I
No.
was always volunteering for it because
Next
of
week.
course it was in a school, so I was right there. So I usually worked it. Now that it's over there, I don't get to it because I'm in school.
The challenge
But-
with the food distribution would be that our subsidy is going to taper off. And so we wouldn't be subsidizing it.
Greenwich House, we were at Greenwich House a few times as well, which was good. Okay, my question actually was to the Schramm Hills Park soccer field. So you were talking about, making it a nice facility. What are the plans afterwards? Because right now we have an issue that people just go and they play their games, they have adult leagues on weekends and stuff, and there's really not much we can do. So have we thought about how we can prevent that from happening after we, make this into a really nice.
The plan will be to have fencing, and it'll be nice. It's going to be kind of decorative metal fencing. It's not going to be chain link fence, and there will be restricted times of use. So we'll have permit holders. We'll certainly have open time. We'll have family time, but really what we're talking about is it's the unsanctioned adult leagues that come in on the weekend, and they don't. And these aren't pickup games. I mean, they come with uniforms and referees. And they don't care whether it rained the day before, and they will really tear a field up. So we're never going to restrict Greenbelt residents from accessing these fields because it's a Greenbelt asset. But the unpermitted use, especially in the adult leagues, those are the ones that really cause. Because a 200+ pound man does a lot more damage than a 100-pound kid. And we know that like when it rains, we can shut the field down for soccer clubs that have permits. We can shut the fields down when it rains too hard, because you have to close the fields, and you have to close them in the winter. Where I'm from, around where I used to coach my kids, they would just close the fields out, and you could not play on them for a couple months because you have to let the grass grow back. And if you don't, then they just get worn down to the point where they're just not usable anymore.
Thank you, because it came to mind because we talked about it before. And thank you for this presentation, by the way, it's excellent.
Let's see, Mr. Roberts.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I'm glad that Braden Field, an old Greenbelt, is going to have world-class playing fields. And Schramm Hills, they need, that's needed to be fixed for a long time too. But the sad thing is that $21 million later, the kids in Greenbelt West have nothing still, not one field, not even one with bumps in it. They have nothing. So if we're going to do that, I don't look at this as a great success because we're not spreading the wealth around. We're not helping the kids in Greenbelt West.
We are investing $500,000 to redo the Spring Hill Lake Rec Center playground. We're going to give them a basketball court.
Giving them a pittance, a basketball court. They need a park with their own playing fields and some better playing fields so that then we can rest the fields over here. Having fields in Greenbelt West would help us over here because then the fields wouldn't be so stressed. You can trade them around and stuff. But we have to do that. We have to invest some money in Greenbelt West and have a park with playing fields over there. We have to do it. And not doing it with this ARPA money, I think is just a shame. That's all it is.
I think we need more amenities.
We can still do it. I think we can still carve money out of here
We
and
can
have
count.
a park and playing fields for the kids in Greenbelt West.
We can cancel every project, buy land, and build a field. And if it is council's vision and dream to do that, we will follow through with it.
But we don't own any land in Greenbelt West to improve. Like these are existing land that we own. So we would have to buy we'd have to find something available because where you think it's going to go currently is occupied.
There's land right there next to your house.
Councilmember
There's
McKinney.
land right next to your house.
Yeah, that's
You can see it
occupied.
from your
It's not
house.
empty.
Councilmember
Well,
McKinney.
we can buy it.
Councilmember McKinney, please. The floor is yours.
I actually want to, I just add a little bit to what Mr. Roberts was saying, is that I think we can look, and I know that a lot of us at this table were not part of the original process when we were looking at how we were distributing funds, and we're probably going to talk about that as we get further into what's remaining, and it might come as part of the additional presentation. But I know I would be interested in looking at what we do have remaining just to see if there is some greater distribution of that can go to fields that might be, and I appreciate the fact that there is going to be a new recreation center over at Spring Hill Lake, but I do know that there are some definite concerns that may not have been as big of concern 4 years ago, but now have risen over in Greenbelt West that we should take a look at. And I'm assuming that that's probably the same across the city. So what was current in time 4 years ago has now probably grown and become a bigger issue. But we do need to look at the distribution because on first blush, looking at this is very concentrated in certain areas of the city that don't always get a lot of usage. So I just want to raise that. I know we're going to talk about that in coming up, but I'd like to have a more detailed conversation about that.
And I'd like to, if there's, and you got a comment? Okay, so what I'd like to do, take a question from you, take a question from the public, but I really want to hear the people first. I'd like to hear your proposal. Then at that point, I'd like to talk a little bit more about what the reallocation piece and what we can do moving forward. That's my objective. Please go ahead.
Well, I guess one thing that I'm thinking about also is where there are ball fields over in Greenbelt West is at the middle school. And there are ball fields there, and we have tried, and I feel like we have maybe recently we got at least some willingness to talk about it when the superintendent was here. So I mean that is where there are existing fields now. I think they might need some work. I'm not sure they're in great shape, but if we could get more capability of programming those fields, I mean those are already there, and I think we just have to. We just have to work with the schools to get access to those. And that is land, I mean, they're already fields.
And the lighting too, they have really
Yeah.
good lighting there as
They
well.
do.
They have those big stadium light, yeah. But the fields, I think, are in bad shape.
Well, you know what, Rodney, you've been on council that entire time. So,
Told them for 20 years, the school's never going to let you play there, and the field is horrible anyway. So we need our own park. The people in Greenbelt West need their own park, their own playing fields. Not getting shammed into a school board field that you get to play once a year. It's ridiculous, and to go on about that continually is just ridiculous.
So we're going to take a couple of questions from the public. So on this, I'm going to say it on this equity question about where the money is going with the food distributions, the rental assistance. There is no regular programming in Shrom Hills Park. There's a field. There's a place where you can rent the grill. There's a little bit of programming, but it's not like the Spring Hill Lake Recreation Center where there's a number of programs going on for youth. So it's unstructured. There've been no food distributions in Greenbelt East at all, none. And the rental assistance we can kind of look at. I think we can sort of figure out where that's been. So yeah. So let's take some questions from the public. But I very much want to hear from the presentation. And there is one question online, which is it's from Jay Davis. Will there be public Wi-Fi in Buddy Attic Park in addition to Spring Hill Lake Recreation Center and Shrom Hills Park?
That's something we're looking into. If we were able to do it, I talked to Dale about that last week. It would be kind of central and close to where Public Works is and up at the front. We wouldn't be able to put it too far out because in order to do that, we'd have to run cables and kind of dig through the park. So we do have conduit that's kind of run up that sidewalk in preparation for some EV that we like to put in there at some point. So that's electricity we could tie into, and we could have Wi-Fi points at that power source. But beyond that, we wouldn't go too far into the park because we don't want to have to run power lines through. And the solar is fine, but those batteries are going to need a constant source of power, especially in adverse weather. So we would have it along the parking lot, but really not into the park itself.
And one of the things we learned in Ohio from the municipal broadband program, that parking lots, putting Wi-Fi in the parking lots work well because families will go to the parking lots and in the car they will use the Wi-Fi and have access to electricity.
And the playground is very close to the parking lots as well, and the restrooms and stuff. So I think that would be a good gathering.
Right.
A lot of people gather at that in the front.
Right.
Okay, well, let's pause and take some additional comments, maybe for the next 15 minutes, because I want to definitely have as much time as we need. So Mr. Orleans was first, Coach K is second, and then Mr. Schachter.
Good evening, Bill Orleans resident. I did not have a chance to read extensively through the memo, so maybe some of my questions might be answered if I had done so or will do so, but I don't know at this point. The slides are not numbered, but I'm first looking at the project status slide. It's about the fourth or fifth page in. And the top bullet says projects that have been completed. In most cases, final disbursement has occurred. And then the next slide is completed projects / programs. There are two columns, ARPA or lost revenue.
Could you get a little closer to the microphone?
I'm having trouble
There
hearing
are
Ms.
two
Rowlands.
columns following the descriptive for the column uncompleted projects, ARPA or lost revenue, and an amount. And it suggested the first bullet that in most cases final disbursement has occurred. It's unclear to me whether the amount indicates that it's a final disbursement or it's what will become a final disbursement when the last disbursement is made. In any event, on that slide particularly, I have a couple of questions. We don't know, or I don't know, how many police department crisis intervention counselors we have currently. I know we had one, and then I think I remember the chief at one work session saying that we had a second. I don't know how many crisis intervention counselors, which is further down, and I presume that's CARES crisis intervention counselors. I don't know how many we have. But in any event, there is an amount given for both of those, that both sets of crisis intervention counselors. The police department, 84,820, presumably CARES crisis intervention counselors, 28,550. I would hope whether those crisis interventional and counselors were wholly funded by ARPA's money or not, that the final disbursement would not mean that the practice and program of providing crisis intervention counselors would be discontinued. There should be some indication that it will not be, and I think it will not be, but some indication as to how it's going to be paid for into the future. And there's no indication here on that. I had some other questions, but I think I've forgotten them, except until we get to the recommendations page. There is a recommendation that there be further allocation to the healthcare vouchers, which is a good thing. But there's also a suggestion that there should be child care vouchers, and I frankly don't recall if earlier in the allocation of ARPA monies, we created a child care program, and if so, what were the specifics of it? I'd be delighted to think that we did at one point. I'd like to know the specifics. And if not, is this a new program that 25 Gs will be provided for? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
There's a lot in that question, or
Much in that question. So
Three questions.
six questions.
was
So-
writing everything down.
So
So I got two very clearly. The crisis intervention team, those are two positions that were funded. But two positions are in effect. We did have some Zach resign and move on to another job, but we still have two individuals acting in that crisis intervention work. As Chief reported at the last work session. The child care voucher program is not a new program. We had a lot of good success with the child care vouchers, and I think that the citizen group can speak to the feedback they receive on the child care vouchers, and it's on their list as priorities. For the CIT moving forward, that's a budget discussion moving forward. We do have funding through December of 2024, so ARPA money will fund those positions for half of the year. We're looking to fund them with general fund money moving beyond January 2025. And
if I were a betting man, I would speculate, put some money down that those positions are not going to disappear. Coach K, please.
Good evening.
You could say your name and just where you live, more or less. We need that for the agenda, for the minutes.
Coach K, Kevin Lockhart, live in the west side, Spring Hill Lake, Franklin Park. I'm sitting here listening. I also represent the Greenbelt Boys and Girls Club football. Last year, we went without a football field through the whole season. This is the same field that I'm hearing y'all talking about, Braden Field, and all I heard was baseball, baseball, baseball. We already missed the season of having our home field because of y'all, Public Works or whoever was supposed to be fixing it. They needed a year to do it. The year's gone. I didn't see anything done, and here football season's gonna come around again, and I don't hear nothing about the football field. That's number one. Number two, so Franklin Park is a private entity in Greenbelt, if I'm not right. Okay. We got a big pool over there that has not been in use for 2 or 3 years with a whole big playground. Now, I don't see why Greenbelt and Franklin Park can't partnership to put something there. It's already there. The space is there. Put a soccer field, a baseball field, something. But I don't hear none of that, or nobody's thinking that. Maybe that can't be done. But like Rodney said, we need a field over there. Of course, we need the space to put it. Well, there's a space. Partner with them and get it done. And as far as Spring, the rec center, I hear the playground was coming last year. Now it's coming this year in March. Meanwhile, and that's fine, but have y'all gone to the rec center and actually walked through the front doors? We got a broken door that's been broke for over a year. We got a sign on it, use other door. It's been there forever. The front desk is terrible. This front desk over here, I'm over here now. My son is over there playing basketball over there, and I gotta leave soon because they're gonna make him leave out at 9 o'clock on time, which is fine. But they have a beautiful entrance over there. We don't. We don't have a buzzer. We don't have nothing. Anybody can come through that door. Anybody. Because it doesn't lock. Because it's broke. Yes, they put in an order for it. They come, they do whatever, and it breaks again. It needs to be taken down, completely redone. The whole front. The carpet on the floor, been there since 1996. Ain't been cleaned. It shouldn't even be, because it should be taken up. I mean, the place is a dump. Take a tour over there. I mean, it's not right that this part gets everything. It's point blank. I'm speaking truth. We get nothing. I'm coming in on this meeting late. There's a lot of things I need to learn and take in, which I'm trying to do. But I'm getting aggravated sitting there listening to all this money going here, there, everywhere, and peanuts coming over the way. And when is it coming? Oh, next year. Oh, in March. Oh, in March. We still waiting. That front entrance should be fixed immediately. See what's gonna happen? We're gonna be on the news one day. Then it'll get fixed. Let's prevent that. Get it fixed. It's part of Greenbelt. Maybe Franklin Park's not, but that rec center is. But I keep hearing March, next year, when. It needs to be done now. That should be top of the list. We got kids in there that they could get hurt with some of the damages that's in the building. We don't even have our own heat. Freezing cold in the gym because we can't regulate the heat. That's crazy. So whether it's my question or my statement, that's what I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you.
I got three things.
Door.
I'm going to walk to the site Friday. That's probably as soon as I can to investigate and look into those issues. So I'll be out there.
And in all fairness, I did a few weeks ago, remember I sent an email out and said there was something with the door, can somebody come and look? And Public Works did go out and look at the door and apparently fix it. So I don't know what that is, but I did make that request and apparently they came out.
Yeah, that's the challenge. And that's the with aging infrastructure, it's what happens. We fix things, they break, and it's we got to stay. So the first item I got from the feedback was the football fields, and recognized that yes, that's also used for football, and the conditions of the field, right? And that's part of the project of what we're looking to fix. The second item is the private pool being filled in and being able to use that as space. I think just in the last couple months we talked about enhanced partnership with Franklin Park. We've got a visit coming up with Franklin Park in the near future, and there's an agenda that we're putting together for that meeting. So that could be one of the items, partnerships that we can discuss. How do we enhance recreational services for our communities? On the third item, I will walk the property on Friday and make sure that we document what deficiencies can be quickly resolved and put a plan for the other items. We've got the heating and cooling system for the Spring Hill Lake that we know we need to fix. We've done some work on it, but there's plenty more work to do. If council recalls, we had a multi-million-dollar project to redo Spring Hill Lake, and that cost just kept going up, and we took that money, the design and build money for that facility, and dedicated it to the playground. And that's the $500,000 that we're putting in the playground. But there has been planning efforts to upgrade the recreation center and the clubhouse. And we've talked about it, and I think we need to put a plan in place to raise the capital needed to redo the rec center.
Hey, with the playground, I know that's slated to start in the spring, maybe in April. How long is April or May? April?
March is the date we have. Where we have supply chain issues as everybody else. So we got a tentative date and cross our fingers that the equipment arrives. There's really an equipment issue. Once the equipment arrives, the teams can get through it in 8 weeks or less.
Weeks or less, so it will be closed down shortly while they're.
Right.
Ready for the summer.
Right. Our goal is to open up for late spring, summer. And that's both our Spring Hill Lake and our Buddy Attic Park.
Okay, so Mr. Schachter had his hand up. Did you?
It's just briefly in response to this, if that's okay. The pool that Coach K mentioned, Councilmember Gordon and I actually had many conversations about that exact area. I mean, he was very passionate about that space being used recreationally and about the city partnering possibly with Franklin Park on that. So I just wanted to put that forward to say that that is something that Councilmember Gordon really pushed for. So it would be great if we could actually move forward with something like that.
Mr. Schachter,
Leon Schachter, 90 Parkway. Coach K deserves to get absolutely everything he mentioned for his immediate community. But I believe the city can do even better at some point in time. What Coach seems to me to be saying is, we're separate, but we darn well deserve to be equal. Well, separate and equal is not good enough. Hasn't been for a long time. What you need to be thinking about is what kind of projects unite the whole city rather than having separate parts. And what a thought that comes to my mind is looking at the existing bike trails and figure out how can we have a bike trail that goes around, kind of like a bike beltway that goes around the entire city from one end to the other. And in thinking about that, I ask you all to put your minds back to when you were tweens, 10, 11, 9, 10, 11, 12. How important and empowering was that bicycle to you? I felt like a king because I could ride from the south side of Chicago to the very north side of Chicago, east and west. I, myself and my pals felt empowered to know it all, to know the whole city. And we were just kids. The same thing can happen here. We can get the kids from every part of the town riding that bike trail and getting to know each other. And I think it would be a great thing to do. I have no idea what it would cost to do a preliminary plan, but it can't be that much in compared to what some of these other projects are costing. So just throw that out there. It's something to be thought about in the mix.
Well, thank you. We
For the Tour de Greenbelt.
we actually do have that, more or less. It needs a little work, but we do have connected bike trail. Actually, you were first, and I'm going to move on at 9:00. We need to kind of move this along.
Hello, I'm Farina Spirizzi. I live in Charlestown Village, and I wanted to say that the gentleman who spoke before me, I'm sorry I was late to the meeting. The gentleman who spoke before me really answered a question I had in my mind about why are we talking about recreational activities? And then as they spoke, I was reminded that this is a life and death issue. It's not just about the safety of the children. It's when we don't have spaces and programming that uses those spaces effectively and sustainably that are for our young people, especially for families as well as just isolated young people, that they get involved in things that are destructive and they lose. It's a missed opportunity to invest in the future. If cities look at people who are renting as transitional people, then they also miss an opportunity because I was renting when I came to Greenbelt, and now I'm standing right here. So I want to invest in Greenbelt. So if we think about, I wanted to ask about workforce development and how that money will be used, like 125,000, I think, for workforce development, and how will we help the families in these communities take advantage of the opportunity, for example, that the FBI coming to town will provide. Because as a government employee, I know that there are so many limitations on who can participate in being hired for a federal position. But what if there were some kind of local resident, incentive or something, or even a workforce development project that allowed people like me or others to help people prepare for applying to these jobs, that is local, not something you have to go all the way to DC and wait in line to get help with, or not something you need high tech skills to figure out and learn online. Maybe if I could find out where I can get more information about the workforce, so I don't take up the time, um, and um, and to ask that we take these suggestions as life and death, because I've been to communities in Calvert County, for example, where all they do, the young people are just waste. And don't take this as Calvert County, but just in that community, in canvassing and talking to people, they were like, there's nothing for our young people. They used to go out on the water, we used to drink on the water, and they don't even do that anymore. So really urging you to consider programming as well as spaces for young people.
Hey, thank you so much. And that's exactly, your points are very well taken. Those are exactly the kind of programs that we have in place and are putting in place around workforce development. We've got a program that's targeted towards young people right now, which provides job training, provides some assistance in applying for jobs.
Correct. We have the Earn to Learn program through Parks and Recreation. We're launching a workforce development project. Well, we're currently exploring a partnership with employees, Prince George's, community partners about being creative, thinking outside the box with workforce development. And that's a proposal that we plan to bring council in the coming weeks. So we're looking at options. We had a great business conference today, and a select tour. We had a visit, a site visit with CCI and some council members where we talked about workforce development for in-demand jobs, particularly in healthcare. And CCI has broken ground on a 50,000 square foot site, and part of the project includes a training center for up to 300 individuals to do healthcare service-oriented jobs and training, because the pipeline for healthcare workers is struggling. So there are a lot of things that we're involved in, and we're pushing all of these initiatives. And
Yeah, and with the FBI, we have to be prepared so that our residents, can easily move into those positions that'll be created both as individuals, but also for the entrepreneurs and small businesses and mid-sized and large businesses to actually be the people and the entities that are making it possible for that facility to exist here in this area.
some computing jobs. One of the things we heard at today's business conference is that this area is going to become the quantum capital of the world. That's a lot of computer jobs.
So what we do now has a great impact on where we'll be in 5-6 years, and not just young people, older people as well, people that are changing careers and whatnot, making that transition. Ms. Wiseman, please.
So there's still an imbalance. When we talk about equity, where it's still people in West and East Greenbelt, even if we poured money into recreation, they're going to be here, and Old Greenbelt's going to be there. And I'll explain how. For example, it looks like we have to do the voucher programs, the supports to make sure that people are not in crisis. But we should be thinking outside the box. For example, this country has had a long-term crisis in childcare, and it's not just about affordability, it's about access. So why can't we use either ARPA money to partner with the county? The county council is actually going to be meeting on putting $500,000 into childcare expansion for the county. We should be thinking about people who could do home-based or family-based childcare in their homes, earn a living, and provide a service to their community. As long as we talk about it being charity, and then sometimes we're generous about the recreation, it's still an imbalance, and it's humiliating for people to have to say the only thing that folks, we're all guilty of it, care about is Old Greenbelt, the New Deal Cafe, the the aquatic center, the community center, the museum, and we're not putting investment that is not just charity, but it's investment for the future so that people are able to build their futures.
Well said. Thank you so much. So at this time, let's go ahead and pivot. People's First Coalition. Yvonne, Rob, Rand, and you've got a number over there. So why don't you introduce yourselves, introduce the other members who are here in the room, and yeah, or if you just speak, if when it lights up red, okay, press the button then. No, it's
Try to press the three little buttons. Yep. There you go. Now it works. Perfect.
So as that's going up. So Greenbelt People First was organized in early 2022 as a coalition of leaders and members from a variety of local community and advocacy organizations to lobby for ARPA spending on people, not projects. We advocated for programs that would directly benefit Greenbelt residents most in need from the pandemic. About a quarter of all ARPA funds, around 5.8 million, was eventually allocated for emergency housing, utility, and food relief, and to fund several innovative new grant programs to support residents recovering from the pandemic. And these were first of their kind programs for Greenbelt. Child care vouchers, educational scholarships, healthcare vouchers, first-time home buyer program, and the business assistance programs. And I'm not sure they're finding the slide.
pull up the agenda and scroll down. The presentation there is People First.
Yeah, that's it right there.
There you go.
Great. And I'm on the second slide. So again, we recognize the broad and careful effort that council and staff made to gather public feedback on how to allocate the ARPA funds, which was just discussed by Tim. If you could go to the next slide. So this is a summary of the 1.1 million in allocations we proposed and explained in following slides. So we're using here the 1.1 million that was estimated at the January 19th council meeting for additional funds, and that I understand does flex and change, but we're starting with this level. So I'm going to go through the line items in subsequent slides. I'm not going to spend as much time on this particular one. Maybe we can come back to this. But I would like to highlight the first one, and I apologize. There's a typo here. There should be 45,000 instead of 40,000. So the first item is establishing an outreach and communications program to promote ARPA programs at 45,000. So a central theme of our proposal that a focused 6-month outreach and communications program can address the slow uptake rates for some grants by promoting ARPA social programs in areas where residents are most in need of these programs. We really feel there's a lot of people that could use this money, use these grants, but they perhaps don't know about it, and we think that we can promote the programs and get more grant applications. So at this point, Nirvan will go into more details for the outreach program. I'm sorry, I only have 5 copies, but maybe you can share. I'm not sure if you've seen seen the proposal. I'm sorry we didn't bring more copies.
Can we skip ahead 2 slides, please? Thank you. My name is Nirvan, and this is a proposed solution to the communication gap between residents and the resources that the city has. So how to better serve our neighbors in need. We propose an outreach and communications program. We believe it's critical to increasing grant applications, especially for our neighbors most in need. Next slide, please. So it's basically a canvassing proposal. That's the core of it. So we would coordinate this with a nonprofit contractor. The space, Shamar Higgs and the space is on board with being the fiscal sponsor. And if for some reason that doesn't go through, Susan Walker from CDC has also expressed the capacity is there and interest is there to also be the fiscal sponsor. So the canvassing would be door to door in Franklin Park, Charlestown North, and Mandan Village. Those are our rental properties in the city, and also location-based at Safeway and Giant. We would have flyers with QR codes linking to the applications, and outreach workers would have scripts with very succinct and clear descriptions of the grants. If you qualify for a home loan like FHA or VA loan, you'll get $15,000 grant if you're buying a home in 20770. Something like that. So very succinct, clear scripts to help explain what the grants are and how to apply. Next slide, please. We also propose targeted social media marketing in zip code 20770, Facebook, Google Ads, anything. And then we have some recommendations for the city on their website, open all grant applications, or reopen, update deadlines, and then review and simplify the application process. Some of these grants may not need the barrier that currently exists. For example, there's 2 letters of recommendation required for the scholarship, maybe not necessary. Maybe you want to keep that, some effort in for that, but we recommend reviewing the process to make sure it's not unduly burdensome to the applicants. Create a video walkthrough of the application process, like a screen recording, just clicking through, click here, click there. And then a phone number or email for support from a city worker. Now, Tim George has informed me that he is the email for that. I think a phone would also be good. But yeah, that's within city management. All right, next slide, please. So these are some details about the actual canvassing. So the first.
I just have a question.
Yeah, please.
Because you say the 20770 zip code though reaches further than the city of Greenbelt.
It does, yeah.
So if we give grants, then we want to concentrate on the city residents because, right?
Yes, that's
Because,
correct.
Okay, so 20770 reaches beyond our city borders.
Chelsea
I just
Woods
wanna-
and the gates of Cipriano.
So I'll have to look into the details of the social media marketing. If you can do narrower than the zip code, thank you for pointing that out. I was not aware of that.
You can do some pretty complicated, sophisticated geo-targeting though, even within the zip code.
Okay.
So, I mean, I
Good to
do
know.
think it's possible. Your idea is possible.
All right. Any more questions? All right. So we're proposing to break this up into 2 phases. The first 4 to 6 weeks would involve actually figuring out the best practices for canvassing in Greenbelt, getting the right workers. We want people that are approachable, that are confident, that are comfortable walking around Franklin Park, walking in Charlestown North, and clearly communicating these things. Canvassing is not easy. It's very, very stressful if you haven't done it before. I'm sure council members have knocked on doors or had people do that on your behalf. It's scary to knock on a stranger's door, and it's also really uncomfortable having people slam their door in your face or. Yeah, so it's not for the faint of heart. So finding those unicorns and hiring them will be, I don't know how long that'll take. I might just have to satisfy myself with a horse and put a horn on them. But so there's some uncertainty there. So we're saying 4 to 6 weeks to find the right people, figure out the best way to actually do this. And then once we get like a rhythm going, we're proposing 4 to 6 months. That'll be like September or so. And at that point. You'll want to have all of this allocated anyways, so we wouldn't want to do this beyond September anyways. So that that schedule lines up with, I guess, the hard deadline on allocating this funds. Next slide, please. So beyond just allocating this ARPA money, since we're doing this outreach anyways, let's consider establishing long-term communication networks to increase civic and economic engagement across Greenbelt. So specifically, we're proposing we recruit residents as we're doing this canvassing for an advisory committee to formulate plans for better outreach and communication within Greenbelt. And then also register voters. You know, we could have people with iPads registering folks, you know, if they have, you know, the proof of residence or, you know, they're there. They, you know, we can do that. You know, if we're going out there anyway, we can register voters. And I think that'd be a great thing, even beyond the ARPA allocation. So that is the basic proposal. If you'll recall from the last council meeting, one of the residents, a recent resident, mentioned that he had just come from Montgomery County. His name was Frankie, I believe, and he mentioned everyday canvassing. They have had a successful canvassing outreach in Silver Spring with multilingual scripts and things like that. So we could potentially get some quotes from them about what they could do for us, but I think we could probably do it ourselves. You know, we know Greenbelt better than everyday canvassing. They know Silver Spring. They might be able to advise on, okay, here's how you want to translate your script, because they have like 12 languages in their toolkit and multilingual services. So they might be able to advise on that. Yes, and there's more details in the actual proposal, which you guys have in front of you. There's appendices with a lot of details. So you can take a look at that at your leisure. But that is the basic idea. Thank you.
You don't need a horse, you just need that big hat.
Yeah, and of course, there's.
I like the idea of the horse. It sounds.
You haven't seen his hat yet. So.
Okay.
There's a budget there also on an Appendix B. That's how you came up with the 4,500?
Yeah, so I had initially allocated much less, but I was, say again?
45,000.
Yeah. So I had initially allocated less, but I was advised by people with more experience on the matter that legal liability insurance for the workers and hiring accountants to do the actual book work is going to be necessary. I'll take their word for it, so I added some more money. But my preference was to keep it as small as possible, just to simplify things. But we added in some more. And it's I don't like putting in vague numbers because I don't know how much it's going to be. Like if you see the details, I have like 68 cents per rack card with mat covering.
That's pretty good.
You know, like it's very detailed.
Rack card. That's not bad. Who's going to do that printing?
And full disclosure, we had an opportunity to weigh in on the project, and we strongly support it and want to see it successful, and we encourage adding a proper amount of funding to the different categories to make sure that it's properly funded.
That makes sense. Councilmember McKinney?
Just a quick question. In your budget proposal, I don't see a line item for training. So how does this proposal take into account, how does the 45,000 take into account some type of training for your canvassing workers?
Sure. So if you look at the schedule, I'm trying to remember which appendix it is. I don't have it in front of me, but there's a schedule. So there's a half hour of training. So 4 to 7 is the proposed schedule, Monday to Friday. So a half hour of training and then 2 hours of canvassing. And for the initial hires, it'll be preliminary at $15 an hour. And then if they show promise, we'll keep them on at $20 an hour. So that's the initial like shopping period with each outreach worker, potential hire. They'll get training during that time, and they'll get paid at $15 an hour for that training time.
So basically like on-the-job training.
Yeah, I mean, I don't expect people to know how to do this effectively, you know? So.
Yeah, so just a recommendation is to maybe add more than a half an hour, just whether it be communication, whether it be conflict management or, problem resolution. They're going to find those types of things when they engage with people, and that might take, especially for people who are not used to doing that, they may need a little bit more, and that may be where you could utilize the organization that you mentioned in Silver Spring. If they have somebody that could be a trainer that could train on that topic, even if it's just an hour or two, that might be helpful.
Sure, it's not a bad idea.
We have just 3 more slides that go through the specifics.
Just one, there's a quick question on, or a statement on, there's a question from Jay Davis, and she wants to know where Mandan Village is. And it's, there isn't a man.
Yeah, Tom Adams recommended,
Yeah, there is no Mandan Village.
Susan.
The apartments that are there? Yeah, okay.
So I don't know that you can hear that, Susan. So there's apartments on Mandan, so maybe is it that, but
Glen Oaks.
the Glen Oaks apartment is, but on Mandan Road, so I think that was just a confusion about the proper name of that particular location.
Yes, basically, all these properties, these are the rental units across the Greenbelt that we're targeting, basically.
So you got, thank you very much. This is a great idea, the outreach, yeah, please.
Yeah, just, can you go back to the so it's, I think it's the next slide. Yeah. So we recommend that you restore the original funding levels for 4 of the People First programs that were cut by $325,000 at the October 9th council meeting. So that's healthcare assistance for Old Greenbelt Family Health. There was a $25,000 cut. The education scholarships, $100,000 cut. Childcare vouchers, $100,000 was cut. And business assistance, $100,000 was cut. So that adds up to $325,000. Again, we think that as we get the word out to those who can most benefit from the grant programs, staff will see more applications. Okay, if you can go to the next slide. We also recommend giving CCI Health Services $200,000. That's in harmony with staff recommendations. That was a very successful program that expended $400,000 within 6 months, helping over 900 residents with healthcare needs. We also would recommend increasing the food gift card payments by $75,000 to Restoration Church and St. Hugh Food Pantry. Marianne Tretler, who runs the St. Hugh Food Pantry, indicated in December that she typically runs out of the gift cards the beginning of the 3rd week of the month. She says the need has not slowed down due to the continued high cost of food. Okay, and then the last slide. We recommend increasing the micro grant program by $50,000. We see this program as an important resource for community building, and we think the lessons learned from the last year will help us more effectively promote these grants. And number 6, we would really like to see the council and staff return to rental assistance. There has been some concern that current rental needs can't be tied to the pandemic. However, we point out that Treasury provided a 3-year window for recovery, which we are still in. And I wanted to share I just did a little bit of research in Census Tract 8067.13, which is the east side of Franklin Park. I looked at the poverty status in the past 12 months from census tables. In 2019, it was 11.8%. It goes up to 16.9% in 2022. However, the more sobering numbers are for under 18. It goes from 11% are in the, under the poverty line in 2019 to 26% in 2022. So that's 1 in 4 children in that area that are under the poverty line. So we contend that going back to rental assistance could really help families in that area. Excuse me. And lastly, we propose increasing funding for 5 more applicants for first-time GHI purchasers for $75,000. Again, that's in harmony with the staff recommendations. So that's our presentation. And again, we thank you so much for the opportunity for sharing this. Thank you.
Yeah, as always, very, very thoughtful suggestions. And, I was just on the phone, actually on a Zoom call a little bit earlier today, and we were talking I was talking with someone about the ARPA program that we've executed here in Greenbelt, and we talked a little bit about how just the input and suggestions from the community from people like yourselves, from beginning to end, we've incorporated them very, very substantially into our thinking, shaping the thinking of what to do with the funding. So these are good. One thing with the with the outreach and communications piece, it seems like something where there's certainly a need, and it's not that difficult to do. Is that something we could just, couldn't that just fit into the nonprofit grants? If there was a fiscal sponsor?
Yes, the the outreach program?
Yes.
Yes. We should council approve and want to move forward with it, we have funding allocation for it.
We've got, we've got about 200 left in there.
In the nonprofit, how much do we have left in the nonprofit?
Push to increase the amount of funding there anyhow. So, yeah, these are good suggestions. Other comments from council? Councilmember Pope. Jenny?
Okay. Thanks. I just wanted to say I really think that the communications proposal is great, really well thought out. I like that you have different strategies. What I like most is that you have a strategy for not just reaching one time, but like maintaining communication, because that's something that, as a newer council member, I've noticed we have a real problem with communicating with folks outside of city center. They're not getting our messages, regardless of how we're putting them out. And I think that it's the right idea that you have to go to them. So I just think that it's a really great idea, and I think that this is a great way to help more people know about the programs that we have here. And yeah, that's it.
So, were you first?
I don't know. I think Danielle was.
Okay.
No, go ahead. I think Danielle was.
I'm
agree. Dithering about whether raising hand.
I really appreciate the thought that you all have put into this. I think it's great. One additional question I had is just around the communication and thinking about the different languages that you're going to need for your canvassers, because I know obviously Spanish is of great need, but I know that there are other languages specifically in other areas of the city that are also growing. And how do you plan to address that?
So from my personal experience, I'm a substitute teacher. I've taught at Magnolia, Roosevelt, Greenbelt Middle. I'm at Spring Hill Lake right now. I was a long-term sub for an ESOL class, and from all of this exposure, most of the non-English speakers are Spanish speaking. You also have some West African Francophone and Caribbean French speaking folks, and then a handful of Afghan Dari speakers, and then maybe some other random things here and there, but Spanish for sure. If we can find someone that speaks French and Dari, that'd be great. So in the proposal, I said, add $5 per hour for an outreach worker if they can demonstrate second language ability in any of those three.
Yeah. So, yeah, again, also appreciation for putting this together. I think one thing, it looks like some things are well in line or already sort of fit well with the allocations. And I haven't done the math on the other, and it sounds like there might be room for that, the 45,000 to out of nonprofit grants if we want to do it that way. But have you looked at how this would fit in with the other proposals, like where we would stand if we included these, like since there's some overlap? I haven't sat down and done the math yet.
We haven't reconciled the two proposals. We did we had a meeting Monday when we talked about where we had common ground, and one things that we walked away with that meeting is that we would present both proposals as it is and get feedback from council of where your leanings are, and then we can work on reconciling the numbers based on your feedback. Ultimately, we need to go back to council at a regular council meeting with the allocation proposal to be voted on by council.
And I guess my other thought is, and I've thought about this, I think feel like for the micro grant specifically, there was a lot of burden having to go through ARPA money with that because of the SAM.gov number. That's something that I think might work better for those sorts of small project grants going forward, is instead of trying to do it as micro grants but through ARPA money, make it more, because we already have the city project grants that come through the budget cycle once a year. But if, for example, even if we just did that twice a year, so as part of the budget, we had some things that people proposed in February February and did their project grants that time, and maybe set aside a certain amount of money that also then gets to, that we do another cycle of that in September or October, and at least do it twice a year, or figure out how to do that, but make that, because then you have a little bit more flexibility about some of the requirements from the federal money, because I know that was really challenging getting somebody that had a sam.gov number. So I guess that's something that I might think about being something that is a great idea, but doesn't necessarily work as easily with the ARPA money. So that maybe is something we should think about through the budget, because then we can do it through our existing processes and see about the community project grants that would support some of the same ideas. I mean, I guess we might have to expand a little bit what we funded through that, because I think some of the micro grants were even smaller scale things than some of the project grant funds that we have. But that's one thought. It just seemed very cumbersome to go through ARPA for that, compared to some of the others. For those really, $500 or $1,000, it would be easier to do it through the city budget.
Absolutely.
So that's a thought on that one.
It's a great idea, and one of the things we've been talking about internally is if we could shift some of the expenses that we have out of our general fund over to ARPA, so that frees up general fund money, and council could do almost anything it wants to with general fund money.
And then it
versus
also
ARPA.
continues, and then the great thing about that too is if we put in the structure for having more than one timeline for that process, that puts it in the structure so that it continues past the end of this year. So that's my thought on that one.
Yeah. Hey, thank you for that. That's actually something I've advocated for quite some time, just because the city gets requests pretty frequently for different projects. And it would be nice to have a different mechanism for responding, and not something necessarily that would come to council. Maybe there's another entity,
Grant
group,
program.
grant
program.
Yeah, to make those grants. But
And
I
do
like
it more
that.
often than just once a year. 'Cause I
Yes,
think that's
exactly,
the
because
thing
things roll in all the time.
Yeah,
I
people
got
might not
2 or
think
3.
about it in February for the thing that they want to do later on, and that's when the application is due right now.
Well, we have been thinking about that, and I think Emmett has mentioned it several times during the past years, so maybe that's something we can look at.
One question I have, or a thought, with the outreach and actually particularly focusing in on the rental communities, and we've got a number of them, but I think University Square, for example, is a pretty large rental community, right? There off of Bell Point by the American Legion. There's Glen Oaks, but also in our condo associations, there's quite a few hidden rentals. They're not really hidden because a fair number of them have permits through the city. But in Greenbrier, in Hunting Ridge, and in Windsor Green, a lot of those units are the owner gets a permit. Hopefully, they get a permit, and they're rented out. And with the HUD regulations, also with those permits, there's no discrimination that's allowed. So let's say somebody has a Section 8 voucher, and there's a rental opportunity in one of these developments, or even in Greenbelt Station, they can use that voucher there. So when we talk about focusing in on the rental community, I think we have to look at it a little more broadly, because I know for a fact that there are a pretty large number of people that are renting units in the condo associations and the single family homes in Greenbelt. So you have to work with the city to see the rental license applications. But beyond that, there's just a lot of people that maybe they're with relatives, households, with people newly coming to Greenbelt or to the United States for that matter. So a lot of hidden aspects that when you talk about equity and reaching out equally, you have to put a little more thought into that, which is something the city needs to do. And generally speaking, we try really hard to reach everybody.
Do it. We have quite an extensive email list of 16,000 subscribers. We're growing our digital footprint and our social media subscribers, so we see growth opportunities there. We're trying, and I think one of the things that I've talked about is the need for constituent services. We have a high demand for constituent services. You've seen it with Charlestown. north, incidents and issues that happen in a community where we need to have better constituent services. So we have ideas. We'll be discussing them in our upcoming budget, and that's all in line with improving services to our residents.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Pope, did you have an additional comment?
Square is missing from that list, I think,
Yeah, it
because there's
needs
a
to be
lot
on.
of
There's a lot of
apartments
people there, yeah.
down towards, down Westway and this entire area. There's a lot. I think that would be a good focus as well.
How many, anybody know off
I have
the
no idea
top
how
of
many
their head
apartments,
how
but
many
there's-
apartments are there? There's
there's a
quite a
lot.
few.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially for the opportunities
In the
to
thousands,
maybe,
for sure. It's,
yeah, to buy, maybe to have grants for a buy-in of maybe a GHI home or something. I think that might be of interest of some people. there,
GHI or
for
you
sure.
know the rental, the down payment assistance program. So here's what, and we're gonna take your question next, and then I really want to talk about the priorities and the proposals that have been put forth by the staff. But I definitely want to wrap up in the next 15 minutes, 20 minutes, so that we can briefly talk about the calendar and be out of here before 10 o'clock. Yeah, just because it's really hard for people that may be watching on Zoom or YouTube or for us sitting here to sit and talk for 3 hours straight. Yes, please, go ahead.
I was just going to say, as council is working towards making decisions about these reallocations, what would be really helpful is to have a side by side, of our proposal and the People First proposal. It would just be easier to, I feel like, suss it out than sort of trying to go back and forth. That's
Yeah, as I'm flipping back and forth
yes,
on my
that's like I'm
computer.
doing that, and I'm kind of trying to figure it out. And some of the things are condensed in some places and other places. So I think it would just be it would be helpful for council if we could see it really clearly laid out.
Right. Okay, and there's Mr. Orleans, you had a comment.
Yes, thank you. The People's First slides were shown on the city system, so I presume when I ask later for a copy of those slides, they'll be available. But it's unclear to me, the written proposal, it was suggested you only brought 5 copies. I saw them distributed to council. Hopefully one of those copies will find their way to the city manager. So when I ask him later for a copy of your proposal.
He wants to.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. That's one thing. I'd like to think that the briefest of attention suggested by Ms. Weaver and also by Mr. Jordan as to the future would reflect my concerns. I don't think they do, however. This calendar year will come and go if we're not all blown up or drowned in a climate crisis by nuclear war or climate crisis. Presumably this calendar year will come and go. We won't have, unfortunately, ARPA to play with anymore. We've seen over the course of the last 3 years needs met with the use of ARPA money, which of course is not our money, it's Fed's money. However, it's time, since we'll be starting the budget season in the next couple of weeks, it's time for council to consider how in the coming year and years, without the benefit of the federal ARPA money, Greenbelt can just try to meet the needs of Greenbelt residents. Thank you.
Okay. Well, what I'd like, Ms. Weissman, please go ahead.
Around Bob, John, this was terrific. Terrific start. I have some suggestions that I hope that you'll take in consideration. Canvases, part of the purposes of canvases is to build relationships. So I think in terms of figuring out what the script's gonna be, it really has to be a little bit warm and fuzzy. I used to work for the national networks that actually had canvases on the ground in different states. So there was a lot of times that, and I can put you in touch with some of the people who launched those canvases. It's about building relationships, and it is also about making sure, and I think this has been discussed, it's not just being bilingual, it's being culturally competent so that the people feel confident or feel comfortable when somebody knocks on the door, because you don't want it to be a knock on the door and the door's never opened if they're home. Saturating Greenbelt with the door knockers is needed. So when I saw initially the 1,000, I was thinking more like 15,000, maybe 20,000 door knockers, and you could probably even find printers that are cheaper than FedEx. Also, the coordinator should be a supervisor. There's a lot of work that they do in terms of managing turf, supervising, training, sometimes having to let go people, cutting, and also constantly recruiting. Canvassing has a high turnover rate, so you gotta. There's going to be an ongoing recruitment that goes on with it. People burn out very, somewhat easily, even when they're paid. We talked about this. On the scholarships, there's one thing on programmatically that I was thinking of is that if is it all higher ed scholarships?
No.
Or people graduating from high school?
No, it's people that would be going after a professional certificate and IT certificates.
And I was
yeah.
thinking, like, even with the union apprenticeship program, that it's like doing partnerships with some of the unions, like
That was the intention.
IBEW and the transit workers unions. A number of them have apprenticeship program. It's an incredible opportunity because, particularly with the unions, if you graduate from the apprenticeship program, you're going to get paid better than just going into some body shop and getting trained in the body shop. The
Exactly,
data
the plumbers
collection,
and-
I hope it's not going to be on Excel or Google Sheets. It really, it doesn't need to be as sophisticated as the van, but the van, like the software should be fairly sophisticated and also be able to travel and travel in terms of getting the data at the end where the users are actually getting the vouchers. Because when you evaluate the program, you're going to want to not just evaluate it based on the number of doors knocked and the number of, you're going to want to know who actually, on our recommendation, our program, have actually called up, gone to CCI or gone to, anywhere else. And they said, oh, these wonderful people came to my apartment and I didn't know I was eligible for these programs. And then that's a way of us knowing that the canvas worked out as well. I think there was one other. On the Giant and the Safeway, I hope you'll consider expanding the locations. One is Aldi's is less expensive. And so our people who are, like tight budgets are probably going to go to Aldi's. But we should also think about our foreign-born neighbors who are going to the Mega Mart in Riverdale as well as in Tacoma Park, because that's where they're going to get the ethnic food. That's where they're going to get the ethnic supplies. So it's just a matter of like trying to figure out how to carve up the different times between the different markets. And that's it, but it was a great proposal.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councilmember Niesel.
Yes, thank you. I was just considering Ms. Weissman's and Mr. Orlean's concerns, and if we are able to use the microgrant money in this canvassing program, I wonder if there's an opportunity here for us to really expand it so that we are looking not only at these very particular programs, but also the voter registration and other communications within Greenbelt. This seems like a very, very important opportunity that we have. So I would love to look at that.
Yeah, thank you. I think the concept is something definitely worth piloting, and maybe it is something we can integrate into our year-round communication efforts. Just kind of seeing how it works, and because I think it will work. It's just a question of the intensity and the frequency. So I really want to pivot and talk a little bit more so about the priorities, and also talk about the next steps in the process. Mr. Adams, so you had a comment?
Tom Adams from 33 Ridge Road. And just first, thanks very much for this time and opportunity to share our proposal. To me, this is all about long-term systemic change. We sort of talk about, but not 55% of Greenbelt are renters, and over a third live in Franklin Park. And those systemic issues just stay with us, and we dance around them at every meeting, every discussion. And so the ARPA money seemed like an opportunity to go deeper and to learn. And so my hope from this communication and outreach is that we really will learn about how are we going to serve this community, the whole community, going forward. There's been discussion about possibly having an advisory group for CARES, but really to look at, for the folks that are have fewer resources in our community, what are the structural changes? You know, when you look at the DEI data that you received, when you know, there's a lot of, we operate at two different levels. You know, we think we're doing pretty well, and out on the street, people are not quite so happy. And so how do we close that gap? And I think this is an opportunity to work on that. And on the micro grants, I would just say that I think it's a both and situation. Mr. George has showed us how one of the condominium, Greenbrier, very carefully packaged grants together, used $13,000. There's other ways to wholesale some of the neighborhood, the micro grants with GHI or others, so we get more people involved and we build on all the great leadership that's here in this community. We have a lot of talent, and there's a lot more ways that people be engaged. And so I would, while I agree with Councilwoman Weaver about the idea of an ongoing program, I wouldn't want to do that at the expense of not continuing to try to do the micro grants. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Those are very insightful comments. Thank you. Hey, so here's the thing. The next step, in my mind, would be at a council meeting where we can vote and make some reallocation decisions. We could possibly do that at the council meeting on the 26th, although we have quite a bit on the agenda. But you know, we're at this point about halfway now. I think is a good time to make some just some tweaking, some modifications, and you know, I jotted down a few priority areas that I am especially passionate about, and I don't think we need to go back and forth about the amount, but I think that if we each talk a little bit about priority areas, I think that's a good way of proceeding. And between now and the 26th, maybe staff can kind of pull something together and we can hammer out the dollar amounts. But as far as priorities, what do you think?
Well, I agree with you, but I think some of the recommendations that the city put forth and some what the group put forth kind of overlap a little bit. There's only a few of them that I would not, that I'm not sure about, right? But the majority, I think could be weaved together. I just need to see it. How
Side by
does it
side.
look in a, right now I'm looking here and they're like it was already said, and then hash it out. If we have something left, and at the end, because we also need to have the buffer in case something happens with the other programs that we have, like you said, after that period of time, then we can maybe revisit some of the things that may not make it on our list. But I just need to see like a comprehensive
Absolutely, we'll put together that side by side comparison, and we'll sort out the things that have common ground.
Yes.
And that way,
Right,
you don't have to do the
right.
math on those. Mm-hmm.
So just in my mind, this proposal about the outreach initiative sounds like a great idea, and I would like to pilot that. And so we've come up with a model. They suggested a model. We've got some ideas, and this idea of door-to-door canvassing is something. There's a lot of expertise in the broader community and political organizations and with the labor unions and whatnot. So
We've got 7 door knocker experts in here.
Canvassing for other campaigns, so I'd be happy to volunteer my time door knocking.
we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Other things, these the funding for workforce development and specifically for the education grants and for the other kinds of certifications or apprenticeships, that's something I want to put additional funding in because I think it's been kind of successful. The scholarships went over really big, but I think somehow with the outreach, I think we can be a little bit more impactful with providing some resources for retraining or training or certifications under workforce development. Healthcare is a big deal, and I think it kind of comes down to lessons learned during COVID. I think there's more that we could and should be doing. Greenbelt was founded and conceived of as a grand experiment in community planning, community development, and being able to, the recreational space, the open space, access to healthcare. That's something that we know that we could do a better job with, and COVID sort of proved it to us. So I'd like to see some more funding for healthcare vouchers, maybe Luminous or Kaiser. CCI seems to did a great job, but I mean, Kaiser, there's going to be healthcare screenings this weekend on Saturday out of Beltway Plaza, the Kaiser Permanente van. So why can't we make sure that all of our residents have convenient, easy, no or low cost access to healthcare screenings? That's something aspirational that I'd like to do more of. Down payment assistance for GHI, but really for everybody. I think that worked really, really well. And I mean, we talk about what are we going to do to help the our rental community. How can we help them rise up? And the fact is, many of them are paying more for rent than they would pay for mortgage. And although there's a threshold about getting a mortgage, on the other hand, the down payment can be a serious impediment. So I'd like to continue to put emphasis on that. The nonprofit grants and the micro grants, somehow we need to up the outreach on that. And with the food assistance, yes, the pantry, yes, restoration center. There's some other providers. Trinity Assembly on Good Luck Road is hosting the composting site. They have a large food distribution program out there, and we've not provided them any funding throughout COVID. Finally, the public Wi-Fi, Buddy Attic Lake, and really the amenities. Where we saw that the proposal in the master plan, maybe there's some aspect of that we can relate to COVID. That's another lesson learned. When everything is shut down, people were out talking and a little bit more because they were able to walk around in a connected way. And so our recreational amenities are so important. And also your suggestion about if there's some way with the studies of Roosevelt Center, making it more connected, pedestrian, cars, parking lot, and buildings, assets. So those are just a few of my ideas of priorities. And anybody else have a list or things? Yeah, please go ahead.
I think at the top of my list would be childcare vouchers, particularly if we're going out into the community. And some people pay as much for childcare as they pay for rent. So I think that's just a huge need in the community. I agree with the mayor on most of his other points with the healthcare vouchers, mortgage down payment, public Wi-Fi. I mean, I think people just need access. So those were those were at the top of my list. And obviously the communications plan, I think that could be, even if this is something like the mayor said that we're piloting to communicate with folks just to spread the word about our ARPA funded programs, it could really inform us on how to communicate with our residents in the future. So, or maintain communication with the residents.
It could also tie into a workforce development because we would be paying people to
for sure.
do this. So.
And they're getting tangible job skills that are transferable.
Skills and training. Yeah. What else? What other ideas are bubbling to the top from the list that we have from staff or just in general?
Added one.
Let's see. What was that?
Fields in Greenbelt West.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree that recreation in Greenbelt West would be really important to me to see what we could do over there. And then after visiting the CCI, the new building today, and seeing what they've already been able to go through, I'm so glad that we're going to be, well, hopefully, giving them some additional monies because they are really having a positive impact on the community directly.
Okay, Danielle?
I agree about the recreational facilities. I don't want to just say fields, but in particular, the facilities overall in Greenbelt West is important. I also agree with workforce development, but I wanted to add to that, looking at youth workforce development as something that we should also pay attention to. Not to say that workforce development overall isn't important, but really preparing our youth for the workforce and introducing them to industries that we didn't know already. So if there's opportunities to maybe look at some of the education grants funding that we might have that could maybe be repositioned for that, is a thought. I agree about the communication and engagement strategy. And then the last piece is just looking at food insecurity in general, right? So we do the food vouchers, but how do we make sure people have access because the food costs continue to remain high? So what are some creative ideas that we can get so that they're not just accessing food, but they're accessing good food? And what does that look like?
Wholesale purchasing.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've seen it in the communities where, like a co-op model,
Right.
where folks who buy essential things in bulk, like toilet paper, right? And they'll just buy it in bulk, but it requires some coordination.
There's some way that we can come together with I love the co-op strategy. So even things what we're looking at this pilot for composting, like is there some type of pilot that might be done for some co-op assistance looking at ways to be able to access and purchase nutritional food of high nutritional value for the families and the people that need it the most.
Okay, so that's a list. Yeah.
No, I don't think I have anything to add to what others said right now.
Okay, and perhaps we can get this on the agenda on the 26th, and if not, we've got a number of open. Let's see, there's another meeting on March the 11th, and actually might shift that meeting on the 11th.
Right, that
as
seems
well.
to be problematic right now.
Well, and I will not be at the meeting on the 26th, and I can't attend virtually that one. So I mean, I think if that's the best place it fits, then. But if we already have a lot on that meeting, yeah.
Okay, so before we wrap up, because we're going to talk about the calendar just a little bit, Mr. Schachter.
Thank you. Leon Schachter, 9B Parkway. Wouldn't it be a powerful, wonderful message and gesture for the council before you adjourn to direct the city manager to fix Coach K's door tomorrow?
I think he already said he was going to address it.
I think it will be addressed. I think our city manager is already on it. I'm positive.
I'm going on Friday. I committed to going on Friday, and I will assess all the things that need to be addressed, and being mindful that they're. I'm sorry.
Time are you?
I will need to look over my schedule, but I have some gap on Friday. Tomorrow I'm booked for most of the day, but I'll go as soon as I can. But I'll be there on Friday, and I can let council know when I'm going to be there.
I could recommend the pre-K story time is from 10:30 to 11:30, which is a lovely time to go over because you get to see the little kids enjoying the stories. So if that's one of your gaps on Friday, I strongly recommend choosing that gap to look at the door.
Whoever's on my 10 a.m., I'm moving it.
10:30 to 11:30 is the,
So
the,
whoever's
story, is the
watching
story
and they're on
time.
my 10 a.m., you're getting moved.
Bilingual, right?
But yes,
Is it?
sometimes trilingual. The last one had ASL too. So
It's Tim. All right, I've informed Tim that we're moving at 10 a.m.
Okay, so I want to go to the calendar and adjourn. Please, do you have a comment? Yeah.
Thank you. It just came to my mind that one thing that's distinctive about Greenbelt is the area is designated for growing food. And the most, like, there are some communities that have, looked into expanding their areas where food can be grown and employing a workforce, whether young or not, to learn from and, actually gain money or some kind of food from growing food for the population. Maybe there could be a community coalition of people, like we could invite those who own the land, even if they want to participate in dedicating backyard space or farmland or whatever to growing food for the community. And also, I heard Mr. Orleans speak about, whatever crisis that might come, it's also good planning to kind of have, a way for us to access food if things are cut off.
Thank you, thank you. Hey, that's interesting. Throughout the ARPA funds, we really did not get any proposals about our community gardens, which are an integral part of Greenbelt from going back to 1937. They continue to
Victory
thrive.
gardens,
We
for
have
sure.
organized garden association or garden groups that are formal or informal. So I have to think about that a little bit, but we didn't really do anything with that. And certainly when it comes to food insecurity, being able to grow your own. And I know for a fact that there are some people that do have considerable sustenance from their community gardens.
There are numerous examples throughout the country, in Chicago, New York, of urban farming, taking vacant land, empty parking lots, and putting actual farm production on them. We have a good basis for it. I think you are familiar with the Earth Squad out in Spring Hill Lake, and they got a little garden. We could look in expanding our investment in that type of programming and see if what can take ground. I think with a lot of these is we have to be willing to take a risk. We have to be willing for things to fail. We put money into them, and they may fail, because simply because the timing is not right. The people that we need at the table are not there, but that shouldn't stop us from looking to invest on them. I have two other items that I want to touch base on this, and one of them is we talked about doing a community event with Nirvan and the People First group as part of the outreach effort, and having a community event at Spring Hill Lake, and that was part of the activities to have a deeper outreach to Greenbelt West. So we're going to continue to plan that, and we're looking to do it at the ribbon cutting or opening ceremony for once it's completed, the ribbon cutting for the playground. So we're looking at a cookout type of event. Maybe I can get Chief Powers to have a cooking apron on and grill some burgers and be out there. I'll talk them into it. The other one is, I recognize Ronnie Roberts' point of making a big investments, and that's a challenge that governments and communities have. When you have pots of money like this, we want to serve all the needs, and so we spread the money around. But there's something to be said when you're hyper focused about one thing, that one thing that requires a lot of effort and resources to get done. And I hope that during my time here, we're able to find that opportunity, that we are hyper focused about this one thing that's going to be transformative, and it's going to outlive us all. Because Greenbelt community has many of those transformative things that are done through history that has outlived the people that started it.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I just had a thought related to the gardening, because when Jenny and Danielle and I toured with Stephanie Warner, who does some gardening in GHI, she commented that there are urban farmers who are looking for land to use, and one possibility, and we talked about doing community gardens as part of the neighborhood design center plan for Greenbelt Station. There's that land sort of between Greenbelt Station and the scrapyard and over there, and it would be accessible also from Franklin Park, and doing a gardening area there, because it is a kind of a big open space with lots of sun. It doesn't have water, which is a problem, but that was one, and I think there may be some other places. So I think that Stephanie would be a resource about making some connections related to that, because there could be people who would really like to come in and use land if land were available, and could then make an agreement about how that works with sharing things with the city. So
Yeah, and one of the things we didn't talk through the Buddy Attic part, there's that area that we want to do prairie area, right as walk along the lake. We've been talking about that as prairie, but maybe that's something, an area that we can visit. It's accessible. There's somewhat of a water source there that could be used.
Yeah, well, I guess the Indian Creek is by the one there, but I'm not sure if that's really, I don't know how easy that would be to set up.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I would say, you know, part of that going on what Mayor Pro Tem was saying is that we had a green space master plan and we, in the city, graciously worked with the Neighborhood Design Center to look at that. In that space that is along the Indian Creek Trail can provide a lot of opportunities to look at some of the things that we're talking about, whether it be recreation fields, whether it be gardening, and it's accessible, and it is also not, it is for Greenbelt West. So if it's looking at a next phase of that study or a next part of looking at how, because it's going to take some time, right, to do that and some additional resources, but there is space there.
And you know what? I'll look into that, and I hope that in our next meeting I can provide an update and we can talk about it.
Sounds good.
Right.
Hey, just a couple of things about the calendar, real quick. The council meeting on the 11th, which is a Monday, but that's also a time when we'll be at the National League of Cities conference, and quite often there are activities and workshops going on until 6 and 7, so it's a rush. I'm wondering if we can maybe shift that to the 12th instead of the 11th.
Actually, I've already looked at the NLC calendar. There's an event on the evening of the 12th. I don't believe there is one on the 11th. It's, the NLC 100th anniversary spring celebration is on Tuesday the 12th. So at least from my looking at their at a glance calendar, I think actually Monday is a better night than Tuesday.
And Monday nights get complicated because we also have the ACE Educators event on March 11th. So I'm going to check with Liz about on the 11th as well at 7:30.
Maybe the 12th, or I don't know, the next week. I just know that frequently on the Monday, while there may not be a large formal activity, there's a lot of other things.
I think last year I just stayed. Did I stay down here? I think I stayed.
Also, just looking at the calendar itself, we have a lot of openings in the not next week, but after that and into March, there's a lot of open dates.
So I'm sorry, I have a blank right next to the date. What are we doing with the 11th?
Is it March 11th?
March 11th is the regular council meeting. Are we moving that or
I'd like to look into moving that. We have a little time, maybe to the next week. I don't know. Let's explore that.
Yeah, if we do it the next week, we would have two in a row. One week and the one the next week. I mean, I think we're required to have one council meeting per month, but we could choose not to have one that month. Like I think what our charter says is that we have to have at least one per month, but I don't think we have to have two. So, I mean, we usually do, but
I would hesitate to cancel it just because it looks like our meeting on the 25th is the budget presentation.
Right.
So I worry we wouldn't have enough time to get all of our council business done if we just canceled it.
Well, let's just put that on the table and cogitate that on a little bit. Maybe
It's tricky.
council meeting or next week we can.
moving it to the following week would be feasible in terms of schedule. We have put something on your calendar today, which is or yesterday, the March 20th, a legislative dinner.
In Annapolis.
In Annapolis on the 20th. So a meeting on the 18th for a regular council meeting may be wise to prepare for that March 20th meeting.
That sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, some other suggestions.
The 18th, is that Amy, I see?
Was the dinner on Wednesday or Thursday? I think.
Oh, I don't want to upset Steve on it. Just some context on the 20th, I took the date that I could get because I think you all know how difficult maybe Alonso's watching. It can be difficult to coordinate all the schedules. So I took the date that we could get, and this is a date that works.
Right. Well, I don't know. Maybe we can shift the Board of Elections to one of the empty dates in March, the 4th or the 6th. Just looking at some of the, because for the new council members, we've got this schedule of regular stakeholder meetings. Some are annual, some are biannual, some are twice a year, some are as needed. So it's a good idea to take a close look at this. Just off the top of looking at this and looking at the calendar and thinking, I think that we should sit down with our county council folks, with Ingrid Watson, our county council person, and Calvin Hawkins or Mel Franklin in the near future, because they're doing a lot of legislative things and we haven't sat down and talked with them for a while. If you look at the schedule, it's overdue. So that's one thing, one meeting to kind of work session to put on the ready to be scheduled or scheduled real soon. This conversation maybe with the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, that process is moving forward. We haven't really sat down and talked about community and economic development in quite some time. It'd be nice to sit with Kevin and to hear some of his thinking. He's really making some great inroads in the program today, and there's just so many things in the future coming up. Any other suggestions for work session for staff to work on scheduling and for the empty dates that we have? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, one thing we talked about was we follow up on the council retreat. And I don't know if, so maybe one of those dates in early March, if that might be a good timing. We wanted to follow up on that. And then we also had moved gate around a couple of times. And so we need to reschedule gate. Now that is one that I think could be combined. I don't think that needs to be its own evening. So I don't know if that's maybe the religious and spiritual organizations or the one about Northway Fields, that when I was looking at the list seemed like those might be ones where we could do an hour on one topic and an hour on the other topic, because we have already pushed gate off a couple of times.
Yeah, definitely. I was talking with the city manager about that. I definitely think we can piggyback that session with another session.
Or even the Greenbelt Center Homeowners Condo Associations potentially, although that one's later. We did
reschedule them. They were initially scheduled for the 20th.
Okay, yes, and I'm looking at the old one. So yeah, so maybe the 28th, the religious spiritual organization.
Jenny?
We're going to schedule Caitlin McGrath in the theater for a work session sometime either in late March or early April. So maybe just having them on the TBD or ready to be scheduled list, so they don't drop off, because she mentioned she didn't get to meet with the council last year.
So I had proposed that we schedule that as part of the budget work sessions. Do you want a separate work session with them outside of the budget conversations with the city?
No, I think she wanted to be part of the budget conversation. So,
And that's actually what happened last year. We put them in.
So we're going to incorporate them into the budget work session. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I don't want to drag this out, but we just needed to talk. Did you have some additional information items?
I covered the March 20th event. That was my priority. I'm sorry. We added the legislative tracking sheet to SharePoint, so that's going to be on SharePoint.
Oh, that's great.
We just started it, so any feedback, as harsh it is, we welcome it, because we just want the tool to be useful to you all.
I'm just happy to, if I find it, I'll be okay.
Okay.
No problem.
Okay, so Mayor Pro Tem and Jenny, you both have some information on it.
Yeah, there were a couple of things that had come up. From some meetings I wanted to report on. On the 29th, there were two different meetings. The Sustainable Maryland Executive Committee that I don't know if Jay Davis is still on, but that Jay recruited me for, although I think she's still attending as well. But a couple of points. So they have been doing these PEPCO sustainability grants, about $100,000 in $10,000 increments, but there is also coming at some point another process for internal grants using some of the new state funding they got this year. So those are not in place yet. They still are figuring out what that's going to look like. So I think that what those grants look like and how the eligibility will be determined is going to be the topic of the next executive committee meeting. But just to get that on the radar, that there will be potentially some additional Sustainable Maryland grants available. They were also talking about using some of their funding for signage for Sustainable Maryland cities, and so that's also something just to keep on our radar. That is possible. There is on February 28th, there is a Sustainable Maryland leadership training that is, I believe it's most of the day, but if that's something that's of interest, that I can send the link out to register for that. But it is going to be hybrid, and I forget where it is, where the in-person part is, but
We welcome the list, and I'll pass it on to Luisa and Kevin.
and she may already, Louisa may already have gotten the list, because I think she may already be on the Sustainable Maryland. So that was more, if for council members, if you were interested in that, I'll be out of town. And then I just to note, because I think this had come up, especially when we talked to Louisa and John Lippert about the Sustainable Maryland certification process. They are working on they've gotten some feedback and working on making some improvements to that process to maybe make it a little bit smoother, because it's a very time-consuming process. So they are working on that. And the other meeting that same day was the Transportation and Infrastructure Services Committee meeting from NLC. And I think the most interesting thing about that was there was a presentation about microtransit and some ways to provide non-fixed route bus transit. And I believe they sent me the PowerPoint slides for that. So I just need to dig them out of my email and pass them along. But it was kind of interesting. I think especially after we were talking to Jessica from CCI today about how they provide Uber and Lyft rides for the people coming to their health center, but they have a grant for that now. So, if that grant goes away, I mean, is there some way? There's clearly a demand for some of that. So those were the two sort of reporting things. The other thing I wanted to bring up was that we do probably need to revisit the committee and liaison appointments. So for city advisory committees, where did I lose that list? We didn't assign anybody to the Forest Preserve Advisory Board, and Ms. Pope actually has 3, including GATE. So I don't know, Amy, if there's particular committees you're interested in, but Forest Preserve Advisory Board is available. And I don't know, Ms. Pope, if you wanted to, if Ms. Niesel was interested in GATE, because you already have PSAC and Senior Citizens Advisory Committee. So if we could also, if there were one you really had your heart set on, we could try to negotiate and shift other things. And you don't have to answer now, but if those were the 2 that we didn't have anybody, or the one we didn't have anybody for, and one where Ms. Pope had 3. So
I have relationships with both of those committees, so I'd be happy to.
Okay,
or
so
both of
that
those
sounds
boards,
like
so I'd be happy to take that on.
that could maybe just go on the consent agenda for Monday for those. The other one is the COG boards, that we don't have anybody that are empty, but we do have some that need alternates. And that's that might be something, those you're probably less familiar with. So I don't know if we want to, I know it's too late we'd have to vote to add it to the agenda for Monday, but I think that might be something to think about, because there's no alternate for the Air Quality Committee or the Region Forward Coalition or the Climate Energy Policy Committee or Food and Agriculture Regional Member Policy Committee. And there may be some others where somebody else, like Jenny, again, on that one has 2 that she's primary on. So I don't know. That might be easiest if just you look at the list and we can talk about that. But again, to sort of distribute some of that more evenly.
I'm sorry, the farm and agriculture one?
Yeah, you're on as
I'm
the
sorry.
primary, but I was just saying there's no alternate.
Yes.
Yeah, so just thinking about that is that, it's, you try to get to them as you can, but it's good to have somebody as a designated alternate so you know who to tap in if you can't make it. So I don't know, is that something that we want to maybe give Amy a chance to look at it and talk about it at the Monday meeting?
So we'll circulate the list, and if we want to talk about a Monday meeting, it should be a regular agenda item versus
Right, a regular
consent.
agenda item, yes.
So-
No, I think it may be that, it sounds like there may be agreement on the other, the city liaisons. That maybe could go just on the consent agenda, since it doesn't sound like there's disagreement. But we may need to have more discussion of the COG assignments.
Yeah, and I've kind of brought this up with the Region Forward Coalition. It's a little different. So there really doesn't need to be a principal or an alternate. It's a group that meets and they discuss policy, but they don't vote on
Okay.
policy initiatives. So it's something really everybody should be aware of, and everybody is able to attend and should attend. They really make suggestions to the board about the broader policy goals, and the discussions are very, very interesting. So if you have not been to one of those meetings, I think they're just meeting on a quarterly basis. It's a good thing to put on your calendar and attend if you can, depending on the topic.
So those were the things that I had.
Okay. Jenny?
Josue already brought up, I was just going to bring up that the ACE Educator Awards were on the 11th, so that might be a conflict.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I
that was
think
it.
I think that's there's just too many things to schedule. I mean, I suppose no, but we already have something on the 20th. No, what about the 13th? If we moved it to Wednesday?
The last day of the conference, Wednesday?
Yeah, but that's just that's just I think that's just the
But isn't it an evening thing usually?
not,
on Wednesday?
I think it's on
This time?
Tuesday. I think it's
Oh,
on
is that
Tuesday.
I have to look at,
I think it's on Tuesday.
So I have to look. But I know there's always an, you know.
The Northway Fields.
Oh, the Northway Fields.
Yeah.
Because I'm wondering if that's a better solution is to move the regular meeting to that Wednesday rather than, because that frees us up to go to the ACE or stay down at NLC. And yeah, I wonder if that works better. And then this Northway Fields,
That's an internal team.
that's an
so
internal
we
one,
have
and
more
that also
control.
could be something we could combine with something else on another day. Because I think that would be my vote. If we have to move the meeting from the 11th, I would vote to move it to 13th. I know we're not voting tonight. Sorry, that would be my preference.
Yeah, I really don't, I think we're having the discussion, staff can kind of look at the feasibility. It's, we don't need to decide that right now.
I think your regular meeting, that's something that you schedule to the 3rd because that's your meeting. The issue we still have an issue for the ACE Awards event that's currently scheduled
Well,
for 11. We have to figure out when's another time. So maybe
But
And that usually starts early. It usually starts at 7 as
7,
opposed to
so-
7:30.
Well, and I think there's also the opportunity that some of us could come up from the NLC event because it's just down in DC. So if there's some people who choose to stay down for some of the events down there and some come up to represent council at ACE, that may be the best we can do.
days that you divide just to cover it all.
Oh, no, wait, no, the ACE thing was the 20th.
The 11th.
No, it is the 11th, okay.
The ACE was 11.
ACE was the 11th, okay.
Yeah.
No, that's the legislative dinner is the 20th, that's right.
Can I see what's on Monday?
Yeah, and I guess there are some things on it, but there's nothing showing up on Wednesday for the in the evening for NLC.
Wednesday is the legislative advocacy day, so there's going to be some opportunities to go down and talk with our federal delegation on that day.
Right, but then we can still come back and do a
Yeah,
council
usually
meeting.
there's nothing in the evening,
Right.
on Wednesday evening.
I haven't spoken with ACE, but I bet that they would love keeping the 11th if you could
Yes.
figure out how to divide that in at 10. It's that.
I think we may have to divide and conquer that one. There are 7 of us, so we don't so we can be in multiple places at once.
Okay, let's go ahead and wrap things up.
All right, so we'll leave ACE as it is. Keep ACE as it is.
I know they look forward to it, and
Yeah. Okay, any other comments before we adjourn? Well, let's go ahead and call it a night. Thank you so much. Mr. George, thank you for all of your